then we're also going live on Facebook. And so you can go back to my personal Facebook page and watch some of these each week if you missed any of them. And then, or hop on our YouTube channel, which is Legacy Wealth. So a lot of good stuff going on today. This will be the last one because next week is our summit in New Orleans for our mastermind. And so we're going to take a little bit of time off after that, just kind of regroup what we liked about these, what we didn't like about these. So I'd love to hear your feedback as well. After that. Oh, there's some what we liked about there's some bounce back from somebody. Okay, that's better. And so we are going to I'd love any feedback that you guys have on these things, any other topics you want to hear about. I'm blessed with an amazing network of a lot of rock star entrepreneurs and great resources and great people. And so if I can help you guys out. And so if I can help you guys out anyway by bringing some value, I will be love to do so. So that being said, today's masterclass is all about building white collar wealth. What does that mean? There's a lot of people who trade their time for money. They make a lot of money, and this is really anybody with using their hands or using their own expertise in order to then make money, right? They got to trade their time for money, whether you are a white collar professional like a doctor, an attorney, a dentist, or you have another business where you have to be there and you're in the office on a daily basis. You're seeing patients or clients or whatever. This is a couple of hacks on how to automate that, how to make it a sellable business. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of house hacking your office as well and what the office environment looks like. And I have several rock stars on. So I have Nick Burton coming on, talking a little bit about the office environment, and if you do want to buy your own office, and I think there's some big opportunity there. So we'll spend probably 20 minutes on that. And then we're going to dive into and how to negotiate deals, how to structure deals, what the financing looks like right now in the office space and what that could look like. So then we're going to dive into how to automate and make your business sellable. I have a guy named Ted Motherall on, who is an attorney and a mergers and acquisitions expert. And so I've talked to Ted about several businesses that I'm building, including a real estate portfolio and what it looks like in order to then take that, package it all up, and sell it to a real estate investment trust or sell it to a private equity group in order to get a higher multiple on the sale of my business. And so Ted's going to be hopping on with us. I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions. This is going to be very conversational. So any questions you guys have, put it in the chat box. There's no slides or anything along those lines. It's all discussion panels for the next 2 hours. And then also Dr. Steven Enriquez, who is a chiropractor buddy of mine in another mastermind, and was talking with him and talking about how he's built wealth, how he's automated his business, how he's brought on associate doctors in his office, packaging it all up, what that could look like for a potential future exit if he ever decides to do that, or at least increasing the multiple and increasing his lifestyle as well. So he doesn't have to be there all day, every day, trading his time for money. And then we have a couple of discussion panels with my buddy Tyson Cobb, who is another doctor and has actually exited his practice. So he's going to have some good insights. And then he stayed on just kind of on a lifestyle basis, a couple days a week, travels like crazy, invests very passively and actively in real estate. So we'll be talking a lot about that with Tyson and how he started passively investing. And then once he sold, how he started actively investing. Justin Cook owns a couple of insurance agencies and has passively invested with us for several years now. And he'll also be on talking about how he's passively invested and now how he's kind of taking a more active approach to the funds that he's making in his day job and how he's deploying that in order to then multiply his wealth. And then we also have Paul Vincent, who is a business attorney, real estate attorney, syndication attorney. He white collar professional, started helping businesses do this stuff, and then started investing both passively and actively on his own, owns a few hundred doors. And Patrick Barand also, who is, I think Patrick's he's an architect or an engineer. I gotta ask him, but I think he's an engineer, and owns several hundred doors up in Massachusetts area. And he's going to be on talking about it, but he still has a full-time day job. And so he actively balances both of those. So we'll be talking just about what that looks like. If you have a great income, you don't want to lose that income, you don't want to walk away from that income altogether? What does it look like to passively invest? What does it look like to actively invest? How do they balance out their time? How do they balance out their efforts? Do they have joint venture partnerships or whatever all of that looks like? So we'll be hitting on all of it over the course of the next hour and 50 minutes. So I appreciate you guys being here. There's going to be a lot of good people, a lot of good connections, a lot of good insights shared here. So we're going to dive in. And first, I want to introduce Nick Burton. Nick Burton is my Chief Marketing Officer. He has been with us for 9 years. He's a partner today in both our education business, all of our other companies, and in our real estate holdings. And so Nick heads up all the acquisitions and heads up all the kind of the front end of acquiring all of our properties, the due diligence side of things, seller negotiations, structuring the financing, just making sure everything gets to the finish line on deals that we want to move forward with and purchase. So Nick, welcome, buddy.
Yo.
How you doing, man? In the office today. Hey,
yep.
Do you have to click the light underneath the desk, the one that's like underneath the cabinet?
It's a light underneath the desk.
Underneath the cabinet. Looks straight ahead, and there's a light underneath the cabinet.
Oh, I see what you're doing. I see what's going on.
Brighten up your face, man. People want to see your pretty face, Nick. Oh my gosh, how beautiful.
There we go.
Hey, your hair looks extra good today.
I know. I'm getting it cut today. It'll be cut at 1 o'clock today.
Oh no.
Good stuff. You know, nothing's coming off the back. It's just straight off the top, just to clean it up a little bit.
That's good. That's good. We don't want anything off the back.
That's right.
All right, man. Well, good stuff. So what I thought would be great is just kind of open up with, a lot of the questions that I get from people who are getting started in real estate are like, how do I get started in real estate? And one of the first conversations I have with them is like, dude, house hack your own house, right? When I first got involved in real estate, I bought a 3-bedroom house and I rented out 2 of the bedrooms to a couple of my buddies. They paid me $500 a month per bedroom, plus split the utilities. And I was out of pocket, I don't know, $300 or $400 a month for my own home, where now I have other people paying down the principal and contributing towards the principal payment on my, when Nick has some bad hair days. So now I have other people contributing payments towards my mortgage, right? And so it's a way to start building wealth, especially if you're going to be in a house for an extended amount of time. I understand if you're only going to be there for a couple of years, and a lot of it's front end loaded with interest on a 30-year mortgage, and so maybe you want to rent and then keep your cash and deploy it into investments. So like there's some economic conversations we can have on that front. But if you're planning on owning a home and being there for 7, 10, 15 years, or being in an area for 7, 10, 15 years, you might as well own your house, right? Because you're going to be either paying rent somewhere or you're going to be paying down a mortgage, right? And I think one of the least talked about ways of building wealth amongst real estate investors, everybody talks about cash flow and acquisition fees. Like, the reality is there's not a lot of cash flow. There are some acquisition fees, but you got to go do it again in order to make those again. The true wealth is created by principal pay down, by holding these assets long term, making payments every month that pays down the principal, and then allowing the appreciation as you move along. And so I remember when we were growing our business and we rented a little office, we rented a slightly bigger little office, and then we started looking at offices to buy. And it's kind of like your home. Your home, if you buy a home and you're the only one living there and you're the only one paying for it, yes, it's an asset, but it's also a liability because it's taking money out of your pocket every single month. And when we started looking at bigger offices, I started looking at offices the same way. Yeah, we can buy an office, buy a house, and then have it, and it's better than paying rent for sure. But at the same time, I'd rather turn that liability that's taking money out of your pocket into an asset that's going to put money into your pocket. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up buying a historic property, a historic mansion in a really cool part of town. And we've renovated the entire thing. And because it was historical, it's like, built 100 years ago, it's a very boxy, it's not like open floor plan type of a house. And each room we turned into its own micro office, kind of like a WeWork co-working space. And so we had 9 offices in this 3-story mansion that we had. We took up the 2 biggest offices. So we had about 50% of the square footage, I'd say 40%, 50%. And then we rented out the other 50% of square footage. And the other 50% paid for the entire mortgage. So essentially, we had, well, not maybe not the whole thing, but a massive chunk of it, at least 2/3 of it, and it allowed us to then own own an asset that other people were paying for, and something that we know. I mean, we've had that for almost a decade now, and so I think that's one of the first things that, if you're a white collar professional, you should be looking at. If you're an entrepreneur at all and you're renting space anywhere, it's something that you should be doing. And Nick, you and I had a conversation about the office market, and we've been looking on LoopNet for deals and all this other stuff. And tell us about what's on the market right now. Like out of all the asset classes, what's getting the most amount of negative press, which probably creates the most opportunity.
Yeah, dude, office is just getting absolutely crushed right now. Like I know, like we just talked about this deal and that sold up in Cleveland where I know in 2019 it sells for what 150, 160 million dollars. And then it just sold for what 50 million dollars, whatever
Yep.
it was.
33% of what it sold for 5 years ago.
Yeah, and it really just comes down COVID, everybody's working from home, stuff like that. It really crushed that market. And I think that people are starting to trickle back into the office space right now. Really, it's if you're good at leasing, I think you can really take advantage of a lot of this stuff. But stuff is moving for pennies of what it did in 2019, and I think it's going to continue like that for a little bit. But I mean, if you can buy a property for, 30, 40, $50 a square foot and rent it out at $12 a square foot, $15, $20 a square foot, that's a no-brainer if you can get paid off in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
And like I lay in bed, and what I do is I look up deals on LoopNet and Zillow and just try to I'm always prospecting for deals. And what I've noticed is that there's probably, it's outside of land, it's at least of listed properties on the market, it's at least 50% of them are office spaces. And it's nothing wrong with the property. It's just what people are talking about, how office has got hammered. Like I was looking at a deal that was 93% occupied, and the asking price was a 10% cap rate on this thing. And it was built, I don't know, in 1995 or 2000. So it was like a newer property, all brick, entire office park, for asking a 10 cap. And it's like full, it's a stabilized asset. And I remember going to Litzler and I said, hey man, well, what do you think about this? Because I feel like there's some good deals when you're looking at self-storage facilities at 5.5% cap rates, and you're looking at mobile home parks, that don't even have like the actual asset, and they're asking 6 or 7% cap rates. And multifamily, right, is they want 5 or 6% cap rates. And I keep on thinking about these offices. And I like dealing with business owners as opposed to dealing with residents, right? And consumers. I like business to business over business to consumer. And so we've been looking at some of these things, and he's like, here's the hard part. The difficult part, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. There's all long-term leases in place, and it's a great office park. But Litzler came back. He's like, listen, because of the negative press, the financing isn't there for it. So the way that the lenders are financing these offices, and I'm talking about from an investment perspective, not from an owner, operator, occupant perspective, right? If I'm going in there, totally different. But I'm just talking about if I'm buying it for investment purposes, and it's going to come full circle because you're going to hear about the opportunity here, or at least what I'm seeing is they're underwriting it at a 78% occupancy. Regardless of what the current occupancy is, lenders underwrite offices at 78% occupancy right now. And there's the debt service coverage ratio. I can't remember what he mentioned, but it was like close to 2%. And then they're building in all these reserves, tenant improvements, and tenant credits, and all this other stuff that might not even be relevant, but the lenders are essentially trying to kill the deal, right? When we underwrite deals, we try to kill the deal, and the lenders are trying to kill it. And if they can't kill it, then they'll lend on those deals. And what I see there is a huge opportunity. Like you're talking to sellers all the time. What are the sellers saying on the office buildings?
Yeah, I mean, I think they know that they can't really, I don't know, beggars can't be choosers kind of thing. They know they kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit and they have to get creative. If they want to get their number, they know the financing scene is garbage right now for it. And so, one, if they just want to sell it traditionally, they know they're going to have to sell it at a big discount if somebody's just going to go to a bank and get a loan. Or if they don't want to sell it for a big discount, they know that they have to get creative with the financing and they need to
Mhm.
own a carrier or some kind of creative financing to make up for that other portion. So it's either it's kind of an easy sell. Say, hey, I either need a great deal or great terms.
Mhm.
They need to sell it with one of those. They're not going to sell it with garbage terms or at a garbage price. They're going to give you one or both of those things.
And we're finding that they're very open to that. And so
Yeah.
the idea here is, if you're going to be, let's say you own an insurance agency, let's say you own an architecture firm, let's say you own an engineering firm. If you're going to be in business for the next 30 years, which hopefully you are, you might as well own a property. You might as well own this. So I was talking to my buddy John, who is a rock star dentist and a rock star business person too, right? A lot of times, um, uh, somebody's either really good at swinging the hammer or they're good at business in the construction side, right? It's very rarely that you find both of them. That you have somebody who has great skill set in a trade, or in some uh, tactical skill that they have, and the business side of things. And John's a really smart guy, both on the business side and on the dental side. And he's got he's got an office in a complex, in an office strip, like it's just like a retail strip. And it takes up probably, it's at least half, I would think, of this retail strip. And guess what? John's younger than me. He's 35 years old or 36 years old. No, he might be 37. Anyways, doesn't matter. He's going to be in business for a long time, right? And he's paying a big rent on a monthly basis to his current landlord. I was like, dude, you got to buy your own thing, right? And you just got to bite the bullet right now. And even biting the bullet, because of where the market is, I think it's a really good sweet spot to be in, where you can go and buy a deeply discounted office property or mixed use or a retail strip and be able to still have your office in there and then rent out the other 4, 5, 6 spaces. And even if you decide to sell your practice, now you've got an office property. You can sell the practice, make a couple bucks, put multiple seven figures in your pocket, and still own the real estate asset that's generating passive income and passive wealth. So not only that, but there's huge tax benefits too. If you're earning active and earned income, you'd be taxed at active and earned income tax bracket. If you own your property, you can pay a little bit more to rent, and that's a deduction for your business. And then it gets rerouted as rental income, which can then be offset by your depreciation and tax at a slightly lower tax bracket. So there's a lot of benefits to owning the real estate that you have as well, in addition to um, having your full-time job. So Nick, what would you do? Let's say you're in a property, or you are a white collar professional, you're a doctor, dentist, attorney, uh, uh, engineer, architect, insurance agency. Like, what would you do in order to have the conversation? How would you approach the landlord about trying to buy your space?
Yeah, I mean, first, you can go to really, I mean, so this is a place that I'm already in, right? So I'm
Yeah,
already renting
I,
that.
I think that's the lowest
Yeah.
hanging fruit, right? Is saying, hey, listen, I'm gonna either move out or I can buy this place from you, right? It's not easy to lease stuff out, blah, blah, blah. What does that look like? And so um, I think it makes the most sense to go to your existing landlord and have
Yeah.
that conversation. So how would you have that conversation?
I mean, exactly how you just put it. Hey, I'm looking at potentially moving offices. I want to buy buy the building and wherever my next office is. Since I'm already here, I figured this would be first place to start. Are you open to selling the building? Uh, Love to make you an offer on it. Just want to know if you're open to it at all. And I assume that since you've already been there, you already have a decent rapport with the with the owner, so it should be pretty easy. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I
hey,
think they know that they got you though if you're in a long term lease, right? And so if they're not willing to sell outright, then I mean, the scary thing for me as a landlord, if somebody comes to me, is like they're leaving. And so I either need to cut a deal, or I know that I'm going to have a vacancy for probably 6, 12, 24, 36 months, depending on how unique of a space that is. And so I don't want to eat that. And I know I'm going to have a loss for 2 to 3 years afterwards. Um, so I'm now, and maybe I'm, more amenable to this than some landlords, but I would think most landlords who want residual income, who want the passive income, would be willing to either, if they're not willing to sell you 100% of it, maybe you can have the conversation of selling a portion of it. Maybe you can buy into 50% of the real estate with an option to buy the rest in the future. But getting your foot in the door in some capacity of first right of refusal and starting to own some equity in that right away, because you know that you're going to be a good tenant. You know that you're going to pay rent on a monthly basis. I'd rather have me as a tenant than somebody I don't know as a tenant, to make sure that that rent continues to be paid. And I think it only makes sense to do that. The other thing is, maybe you're not prepared in order to buy it. Maybe you don't have the cash, maybe the liquidity, or something changes. You're not, but your lease is coming due. I would have that conversation of like, I want the option to buy this. I'll renew for another 5 years on my lease, but I want to include it in that extension. I want the option to buy in the next 5 years as well at this price point. And you can negotiate that today, even though you don't want to buy today, based on today's rates and today's market of how these office values have started coming down. You can negotiate that today and then buy it in 5 years. So there's a lot of different ways that you can attack this, and get yourself in a good deal. So let's say the landlord doesn't want to sell. They're not willing to give you an option. They're not willing to renegotiate. You're looking to find another deal. Where would you go in order to go find an office space?
Yeah, I would go to LoopNet, and LoopNet isn't the greatest place for a lot of real estate deals, but it is a really good place for office. It's probably the number one. I think it's the number one spot to list offices for lease, and in turn, it's also a great place to list office for sale as well. But I would start on LoopNet. I would start with all the properties that are for sale.
And this is, guys, this is an app and a website you can just download. If you don't already have it, download it. And then you can just search around. It's like a Zillow for commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And so just go on there, and then you click the parameters. I'm looking for an office, and then you can zoom in on the map and look for anything that you're looking for in that area. And to Nick's point, you can search for sale, but you can also search, like, one of the ways that we find apartment buildings is we search apartments for rent, and then we call up the landlord and say, I'm not looking to rent your apartment. I want to buy the whole building. Do you have any interest in selling? And so that's another way that you can find those deals. But
yeah, and
I'm
one
sorry,
of
keep
the
going.
other things is that's nice about LoopNet and difference of retail or medical or office compared to apartment buildings is if you find a for lease ad for let's just say an apartment, and it's in a big apartment building, right? You really don't have any idea how many units are vacant. Yeah, hey, there's at least one, right? But if you find a for lease listing for office or industrial or medical, and it says, hey, the space for lease is 35,000 square feet, and you look up the building, which it's right there, and the whole building is 45,000 square feet, you know that 35,000 out of 45,000 is vacant, and these owners are hurting a little bit. So now if they only have, it's a 1,000 square foot office in a 300,000 square foot place, that's a little bit different. But it's very clear on LoopNet how desperate some of these people may be based on how much vacant.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if they're bleeding taxes and insurance and utilities and maintenance and management and not having revenue come in, there's the opportunity cost there as well. And so it's very obvious to see what the motivation financially can be.
Sure.
And Lee had mentioned Crexy. Yeah, the Crexy is another great one. Actually, LoopNet is owned by CoStar, so their prices for listings has skyrocketed. So there's a lot of brokers that are like boycotting LoopNet right now and going over to Crexy. So they're both great resources to go look up office property. So good stuff. And then what I end this segment with is that although, people like me who might be open to buying office as an investment, I don't get good financing terms. You, as like an owner occupant, if you're occupying a certain amount of the space, you're going to get way better financing terms than I can. So because your financing terms are better, it's going to be cheaper money for you at better terms than it would be for a typical investor. So the competition has been reduced substantially if you're an owner occupant trying to find your own space in the office space. So something to consider. If you're not already doing that, I think that's an easy way as a white collar professional with a full-time job and full-time responsibility to start building long-term wealth. And do it today, because the saying, it's like, you don't wait to buy real estate, you buy real estate and then wait. Because if you do it today, and even if you don't transact or whatever, like you don't want to sell your business for 10 years or 20 years from now, well, guess what? Now at least the real estate's owned free and clear. You can sell the business, and then you can make another $1 million, $2 million, $5 million on the piece of real estate property too. It's a natural way to essentially double your valuation whenever you do look to exit. So good stuff. Nick, appreciate you being here, man. Thank you for the insights. It is I want to pivot over to making your business sellable, making your business buyable for an entity. And when you are the person who's responsible for generating the revenue, they're going to want you to come with it if you ever sell, or it's not going to be sellable because they know that the revenue is generated primarily from you. So now the question becomes, how do you automate the business? How do you, if I'm a dentist or I'm a doctor or I'm the engineer, the architect with the accreditation, right, and with the degree in doing that activity, how am I ever able to get out of this hamster wheel in order to be able to sell the business in the future? What is that? And shit, in order to take a vacation, right? And I know there's a couple things, but I want to hit on a lot more of that. So we have Dr. Steven Enriquez. He is a chiropractor on the West Coast and does a lot of good stuff. There he is. What's up, buddy? In the office early, man. What's up? Appreciate you being here, buddy. And so Steve and I are in another mastermind. Mark Evans, actually. A lot of you guys know Mark. And owns a chiropractic office and has several other associate chiropractors working with him, so that way he can balance out the life and balance out the lifestyle that being a white collar professional affords you. So looking forward to appreciate you being here, buddy. And then Ted Motherall's here as well, who's a mergers and acquisitions attorney out of Cleveland, and has worked with several people that I know. And I've worked with Ted as well, and super accommodating and super engaging, and really knows this world well, working on businesses that are selling for a few $1 million up to hundreds or billions of dollars. And so a lot of understanding in the space of how to structure your business in a way that then makes it sellable. So Steve, I want to start with you, man.
Sure.
Let's talk about, like, when you get your degree, you become a doctor, and now you're out there trading your time for money, using your hands in order to actually create revenue. That's exciting, right? The income grows, but what does it look like from a lifestyle perspective, and how can you bridge the gap so that way you can go and take a vacation and still make money? Like, what does that look like?
So the biggest thing with that is that, getting people to manage processes for you and kind of streamline everything. And so how do we create this reproducible thing, especially for a service-based industry? Because, we want the patient to feel a certain way every time they come in the office. Mm-hmm. So how do we duplicate that?
I want to see Dr. Steve every time that I come in, right? And that's a hard thing to then hand off.
Yes, yeah. You basically create a job. You create your own prison, especially if you're really good, and especially if you have a lot of personality. Everybody wants that energy. Everybody wants that healing energy. So how do you, hand that off to another doctor? How do you hand it off to employees and staff, team? That's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what I found is, a lot of people, I talk about raising money, I talk about investing in our deals, and so a lot of people wanted to talk to me about investing in 123 Main Street, and at the same time, I'm constrained by time, and so I don't have it to the point that you guys do, but what has worked for me is I essentially bring in an outside person. I brought in Fadi Boumitri, who is a credit, right? He's an attorney. He's very respected. He's well spoken. He's got good energy, and you got to find that person that is an extension of you. And then it's really important for you as the authority and as the person who everybody's looking to and who wants to do business with, to edify the person that you brought in, meaning build credibility in them and say, hey, listen, he's going to be able to cross every T, dot every I, going to be much more detail oriented than I would be. And he's going to be able to respond faster and all the good things that he's going to be able to do. Obviously, I'm always available as well, but he's a great resource for you to have, you know, and then
Right.
and then once they engage with that person, now it's easy, right? Now it's I don't even get most of the phone calls anymore. So that's a way. And you as a doctor can bring in associate doctors, right? You can bring in associates where maybe they don't own the practice, maybe they can invest into equity in the practice, maybe, but you can pay them very well. There's other people who just don't want to be owners of a practice and they just want to work for someone else, and that's totally cool too.
Yeah,
totally. And then when you're on vacation, obviously you can take care of, or they can take care of your patients when you're back and they want to go on vacation. Then obviously, you know, they can go on vacation and not worry about business slipping and be able to keep going that way, right?
Right. It's a whole different set of, it's this peace of mind, you know, when you can finally get it going. Like first it's this idea, it's like really scary to let go of that control, but you know, once it's like up and humming, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, it like worked out. Everything that, you know, all the masterminds and all the education and all that stuff finally came together. You didn't know how it was going to exactly work out, but you know, it's a process.
No, for sure. Good stuff. Ted, talk a little bit about, maybe give a high level on what you do, some of the companies and stuff that you have represented. And let's talk about what are the commonalities, the most important bullet points that somebody can leave here today and at least start attacking, right? We're not going to be able to give them all the answers, but what are like the top 3 things that you're like, these are the things you really going to start working on and start working on it today, as opposed to 5 years from now when you're trying to sell. So give a little bit of backstory on you and then some of the main maybe bottlenecks or where people drop the ball that they should start a little bit earlier.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. And thanks, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time. So once again, my name's Ted Mother. I'm the chair of the corporate transactions group of Walter Haverfield. We're about 125 attorneys in Cleveland and Columbus. But the great thing about being a transactional attorney is I represent businesses in all 50 states. And it's from startups all the way to publicly traded businesses. We work primarily in the middle market on the M&A side. And my definition of the middle market, maybe it's a Midwest definition, is anywhere from 15 million up to $500 million. That's where we operate. We did over 12 transactions of 100 billion plus. And those were companies that we worked with for years and years to grow and scale and strategize their growth. So, you know, that's the best part of what I do, is when I'm working with somebody like Tim or Mark Evans or anyone on this call, and we're working hand in hand to grow and set everything up from a legal perspective. But to Tim's points, if you are, and Dr. Steve makes an excellent point, I almost look at it as like glasses. Once your glass is full, you need to get another glass that you trust, fill that glass, continue scaling out the process. When I started my practice, when I was a partner, I was doing everything. And now I have 22 people underneath me. And you have to get your clients comfortable with those people. You have to put people in the right relationships for personalities. And Dr. Steve's right. You have to really enjoy what you do. I mean, if you enjoy what you do and you have a great personality, that resonates. And you want those kind of people around you as well. And sorry, I talk with my hands a lot, so I'll put them down as much as I can. But the 3 biggest things from a legal perspective that I see that are errors or that you can do to really grow value in your practice or set yourself up for a sale is, the first thing you need to do is, and you can work with somebody like me, or you can do it internally, and you guys can even ask me for it after this, is I like to give my new clients who say, hey, Ted, I want to sell in 6 months or a year or 2 years. I give them a sophisticated buyer due diligence request list, and we set up a free of charge SharePoint data room. And I say, I need you to do 2 things. I need you to get a valuation of your business, so you have a benchmark, because Usually somebody's like, well, Dr. Steve, I have this great chiropractic business on the West Coast. I think it's worth, 15 million. And then you go and you get a valuation. And sometimes I would say almost half the time it's worth more than that and materially more than that. And then you're like, okay, now I really need to think about a strategy here. The due diligence request list in the data room helps you set up all your due diligence before you go through a process. All of your legal documents, your corporate documents are organized. You're looking over them to make sure you don't have any red flag tax issues. You don't have any red flag contract issues, because I've been in dozens of deals in my 20 years of doing this where we don't do this until we have a signed letter of intent. We get into due diligence, the buyer sees a material due diligence issue, and one of two things happens. The buyer comes back and says, we're going to need to substantially reduce the purchase price, or you're going to need to indemnify us for a lot longer on this. Or, and this is a worst case scenario, the buyer's like, we don't want to handle this. We're leaving. We're out of here. So, doing that work up front with somebody who knows what they're doing and having it all organized, when you go out to market to sell your business, it's not only going to maximize your value, it's going to show a buyer how sophisticated you are in the process. And it's going to expedite the timeline to get a deal done, because that stuff is all done. It's ready to go. We just did about an $11 million deal with it. We do a lot of dental roll-up practices. And we went to a buyer that we worked with before, and they're like, all right, this is going to take about 90 days to get this deal done. And when they had the due diligence request list, we had all the diligence done in a week, and we got the deal done in 35 days.
Wow.
So, great.
Doing that stuff up front with the right professionals cuts so much time, cuts so much fees, and gives you the peace of mind to know, hey, I don't have any skeletons in the closet. My company's worth this. I can negotiate it up based upon the market. You have a really good blueprint for going out, whatever your timeline is, for an exit.
Yeah, and here's the thing: even if you don't want to sell, if you want to hang on to your company for the next 20 years, you should do that anyways to make sure you're running an efficient business, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we do with a lot of our bigger clients is we have that data room. Every time they sign a new contract, every time they do a new deal, or they buy a company, or they do a joint venture, everything goes into that SharePoint. Everything's organized on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So yeah, if you want to hang on to your company, you're not scrambling to find documents. You're not scrambling to find financials for tax returns. It creates so much time where you could go on vacation or do what you want with your time. I mean, organization up front, whether you want to sell or not, that's a great point, Tim, is just going to create so many efficiencies for you and your team.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where the peace of mind for me, and we do this, whenever we're selling a property or buying a property, we have a due diligence checklist. Here's all the things we're going to ask about. We're going to call it the police department. Why? Because in the past we didn't call it the police department, and now we know that there's X number of police reports and this, and there's how often they go there, and we're doing all those things ourselves. So before we go then to sell one of our properties, we go through that same checklist to make sure that everything's going to be in great shape. So that way we can overcome any sort of obstacle. We can make sure that we have or overcome any objections, and be able to have the story and ensure that everything is in place and organized. And then as soon as that buyer sees our deal room or our due diligence stuff, it's all right there, and they see how organized we are. So even if it might not be a stable deal, they see how organized we are, and now it's they're not trying to get a haircut on the price. They're not trying to get a reduction on value. They're not trying to retrade us or anything along those lines, because we're able to hand all that stuff over. So versus conversely, right? If you got back of napkin financials and it's somebody who just scribbled it out on a piece of paper, and like, there's no chance anybody wants to take the liability of buying that business or buying that piece of real estate unless it's at a deep discount. There's all sorts of indemnifications and seller warranties and all this stuff, which just creates additional stress and liability on you. And you're like, yeah, I'm selling it, but I still have all the liability for another 4 years or whatever. Yeah, so having this stuff in place is such a key integral piece. So good stuff. Steve, what does it look like from an operations standpoint for you guys? How many associates or how many doctors are in your office?
We have two doctors.
2 doctors. So you guys kind of trade off. Are you guys looking to scale that up? Are you guys looking to, like, what are kind of your goals over the next 5 to 10 years on the business?
So my goal is to open 5 new offices in the next couple of years. Hire more doctors, just scale everything so that way we can really serve a lot of people. I'm finding like little niches like personal injury and stuff like that. It's easier to scale because it's easier to market for certain things. I'm really excited about it, man. Pumped.
That's
Fun.
cool.
Yeah.
And I think the niche world, a lot of times the more niche you are, the more money you make, right? Like the more focused you are, the more focused your marketing can be, the more focused your sales efforts can be, the more it's just rinse and repeat with the exact same client profile over and over and over and over again. And it makes it that much simpler than to then take it to a private equity firm in order to be like, yep, I'm buying it. Okay, hey, this guy really knows what he's doing. He's really organized. He knows exactly what his demographic is, exactly what his avatar is. The marketing's all dialed in. All they have to do is press a button, and it's all automated and perfected. And I think that's a big component of the of that space. But if your house isn't in order, your original house isn't in order, you can't get the second, the third, and the fourth, and the fifth location without doing all these things and making sure that everything's organized on the front end. So good stuff. Ted, give me some other ideas and other things that we could be doing. So first is the deal room. What are a couple other things that people can start organizing and start putting in place right now, and to ensure that they're going to get the highest multiple possible?
Yeah. And you kind of touched on it. And that's really just your level of sophistication. Your level of sophistication is always going to make you money and save you time. And what I mean by that is when we set up the data room, what we do as a law firm is we go in and we do what's called a corporate audit. And we look at everything from soup to nuts, and we give you some suggestions as to these are the things that you need to do to be ironclad for going out and selling your company and maximize your economics. So that could be, just like you said, all the template documents that you have, for in Dr. Steve's situation, he's a successful chiropractor. We would look at all of the disclaimers. We'd look at everything under the state of California or whatever state that he's operating in. We would make sure they were ironclad in terms to limit his liability, protect him. And just like you said, as you go through deals, as you work through things, those documents are tweaked and they're protected even more. And when you have those, a private equity firm will always come in and they will say, wow, you guys have all your template documents. They're up to date. They protect you guys. These are ironclad. You have a great management team. And private equity firms are always looking to tweak. In situations like that, not only do you make top dollar, not only do you get a deal done in an expedited time frame, but a private equity firm says, stay on for as long as you want. We don't have to touch this. This is a turnkey business. So those are the suggestions, and those are the things that you really need to think about. Another thing that you need to know is really timing. You need to have a good M&A attorney or a good consultant or a good investment banker that knows the M&A activity in your particular industry. So dental roll-ups, chiropractic roll-ups, any type of white collar roll-ups that we're talking about today. There's research that comes out quarterly that says, hey, here are the EBITDA multiples that we're seeing, and here's the volume, and here's the activity. And a rule of thumb, just in general in the M&A world, is Q4 deals are always going to be a little bit more expensive. And everyone always says, Ted, why is that? Well, a lot of these investors in these private equity funds, they have investment agreements that state that their dollars have to be put to work within 12 months of making that investment. So you always hear the saying that all of these private equity firms have a lot of dry powder on the sidelines. So setting yourself up to go to market, if you want an investment banker or even somebody like me who can reach out to his network, it's always good to get an extra turn or an extra half turn on that EBITDA multiple or your trailing 12 revenue in Q4. So you need to know where the market is, if it's down, if it's up in relation to your exit planning timing, because you always want to maximize what you're getting and maximize the economic bucket. So you should be knowledgeable of that process while you organize your company for an exit.
Can you speak to what you've seen just in the past 2 months of, I mean, here's my real estate experience. Things were very slow, probably the slowest quarter of the past 10, 15 years was Q4 of last year, or maybe Q3 going into Q4. But the second half of last year was like the slowest few months of a lot of people's businesses. And I noticed that because I coach hundreds of entrepreneurs, right? And real estate folks. But what I found is there was a lot of excitement over the past 60 days or so, as soon as New Year's hit. And as soon as they said the Feds aren't going to be increasing rates and there might be a couple rate drops and all these, and they've kind of not backpedaled, but they've scaled that back a little bit. They thought there'd be 4 or 5 rate drops. Now they're talking about 3 rate drops. But even then, I mean, you see what's going on in the crypto industry, you see what's going on in the stock market, you see what's going on. And I'm in the real estate world, my phone has been ringing off the hook from buyers and brokers who want to buy my apartment buildings. And so I found that there's been a lot of excitement over the past, at least in my world. What have you seen from the private equity standpoint and in the business buying world over the past couple of months since the beginning of the year?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. You hit the nail right on the head. The biggest variable last year that kind of slowed down, especially the real estate market, was just the interest rates on debt. It was very, very difficult and very, very expensive to go out and get the facilities that you usually needed to get as a buyer in order to complete your deals. And that's either all debt or a mix of debt and equity. I mean, at one point in the fall, I mean, you were seeing interest rates from traditional banks creep up to where you usually see mezzanine financing interest rates. I mean, I was seeing 9, 10, 11, 12% interest rates, and you usually don't see that unless you're trying to get that second position mezz financing to complete your deals. So the biggest variable with real estate developers, real estate buyers, was that they rely heavily on the lending institutions and the lending markets, and the interest rates just weren't there. I do agree with you that there were some aberrations, as I call them, within the M&A market, where there's just so much volume right now that the M&A market is on fire. And one of those white collar professions is the financial advisory services industry. I don't know if we have any financial advisors on the call, but you're seeing an unprecedented volume of private equity buyers coming into the market. And the reason for that is that 60% of that industry, all the baby boomers, are going to retire in the next 10 to 15 years. So it is a grab for these client accounts and consolidating these businesses and rolling them up. So that's just an example. For this year, you're absolutely right. You're seeing a lot of optimism in real estate. You're seeing a lot of optimism in industries from an M&A perspective that were down last year. Heavy manufacturing, plastics and polymers. Healthcare is usually recession proof, but we've seen a little bit of a dip in that. I don't know if there are any dentists, but dentistry roll-ups and dentistry practices are still pretty robust. But you're seeing a lot of activity and a lot of optimism for 2 reasons. Those rates are going to go down, and private equity firms have more money on the sidelines than they have ever had in the past. A New York Times and a Wall Street Journal came out article in January basically itemizing out the big private equity firms. And this is just the big private equity firms that do the billion-plus deals. They just have so much money sitting on the sidelines waiting to put it to use. So those are the 2 variables that you see that I actually think are going to make it a pretty robust M&A market for 2024.
Mm-hmm. And what do you see, like, what are the motivations or how can we capitalize on those private equity firms and how much money they have, right? Like, you're talking about billion-dollar companies that they might be trying to buy. How can somebody with a 7 or 8 figures, probably most of the people on this call, from doing a million, couple $1 million a year to tens of millions of dollars, how can we capitalize on that over the course of the next 12 months?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And every client who's always looking to sell always asks me that question. And the answer that I give them is, you can do this the organic way, or you can do this the inorganic way. See, the organic way is you can use somebody like me, or you could reach out to your competitors, or you can reach out to people in the market, and you can try and find a buyer. You can try and find a group of buyers to drive up your price. The advantages of that is you don't use an investment banker, so you don't have to pay an investment banking fee, which these days is about 4 to 8% of the transaction fee, the enterprise value of the deal. That being said, if you have a really good investment banker and you kind of strike out in going out in that organic approach, then I would hire an investment banker who could reach out to 200, 300 buyers, put together a really sophisticated confidential information memorandum, and drive up the price and the value and find you the right fit in going through a formal auction process. I'm happy to kind of give an overview of what that auction process is, if everyone isn't familiar with it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, so the investment banker is essentially kind of like a business broker, but
Correct.
they also offer the financing as well, a lot of times.
Yeah, they offer financing, or they really just do all the quantitative analysis to make sure that you're maximizing all of your economic buckets. So a perfect example is, say I'm a doctor like Dr. Steve, I'm enigmatic, I'm growing my business, I think it's worth $20 million. I go out, I call Ted and I'm like, Ted, give me 2 or 3 investment banking referrals. I interview them, I pick one. What the investment banker is going to do is they're going to do a valuation of your company. They're going to lock in a range of what they want to give you. And a lot of good investment bankers are like, hey, if we get you in this range, you can give us 4% of the transaction value. But if we get you anything above this, our transaction value and what we get will go up. What they'll do is they'll get all your information. They'll put together a very glossy, fancy, confidential information memorandum. They'll reach out to, let's just say, for example, 200 potential buyers. We'll enter into NDAs with each of them. We'll track where they are. We'll give them 30 to 45 days to look at everything in the SIM, as we call it. And then they have to come back and put in what's called an indication of interest. So let's just say of those 200 buyers, let's say 30 say, yeah, we're interested in learning more. We're going to put in an IOI. So of those 30, then you go through management meetings, you meet them face to face, you open up a data room so they can look at the data room and do some due diligence. And then, 30 or 45 days later, of those 30 interested parties, maybe 7 submit a formal letter of intent to buy your company. And at that point, you sit down with your M&A attorney, you sit down with your investment bank, and you weigh all the variables. You weigh the economics, you weigh the cultural fit, you weigh the brand and the legacy, you weigh how you're going to operate once you're bought. And after you weigh all those variables, then you negotiate, you pick, okay, this is my number 1A. Let's try to get a couple more $1 million in the earnout or in guaranteed consideration, and you negotiate that LOI. If it doesn't work out, then you move to your plan B, your second. And once you get a signed LOI, then that investment banker is going to do all the quantitative analysis. Your lawyer is going to draft all the legal documents. You're going to close the transaction. And I would say I lean on investment bankers and good investment bankers because they usually add 2 to 3 times what you would get if you just tried to go out and get a buyer yourself.
Wow.
They're worth their weight and they're worth their transaction fee if it's one of the good shops that really specializes in your industry, whether it's dental roll-ups or chiropractic roll-ups or other, law firm roll-ups, anything of that nature. It's their job to go out to their whole network. It's their job to drive up interest, which is going to drive up price, which is going to get you more money at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree 100%. I think, and it's similar with listing with like a real estate agent on the real estate side. It's like, I'm a little bit different, right? Because I have a big real estate following. And so I have a huge network of buyers and folks. So we do have an internal dispositions team. But for most people, it makes a lot more sense to just hire a professional to quarterback that, because whatever their fee might be, they usually get you 2 to 3 times whatever that fee is. So it pays for itself plus some. And they're doing all the work, right? Like they have to handle it. They are handling communication, they're handling showings, they're handling a lot of the negotiations, a lot of the time wasting phone calls, dealing with the tire kickers and all that stuff. And so I think it does make a lot of sense, especially in that world, in order to make sure that you're getting the highest multiple and it's done professionally. It's gonna the whole transaction is gonna feel more professional and cleaner for a real buyer to come in as well, and for them to feel more comfortable, and then in order for them to then make the biggest payment and buy it out. So good thoughts there. What are your thoughts on like on earnouts? You mentioned earnouts, you mentioned or upfront cash or seller carry and all that kind of stuff. Have you seen earnouts and seller carry and that kind of stuff blow back, or the buyer not perform on some of that stuff in the past? I've heard I've heard horror stories about it, and I've also heard, no, this is the way that you get your price, and this is the way that you get your multiple, and you take as much chips off the table now, but then you got this hope of future money. But then I've also heard some of the big sharks, right? They find some little nuance in there, and they just don't pay out the earn out. What's been your experience on that?
No, so that's a great question. I'll try to do this. I know we're running out of time. I'll try to do this as quickly as I can, but let me just take a step back and talk about the consideration that you can get in a deal. I mean, you can get cash, and you can get a promissory note, seller financing. And then what a lot of private equity firms do is you can get rollover equity, which is basically, I'll just give you an example. Say I'm selling my company for $10 million to a private equity company. And they say to me, Ted, we're going to give you $10 million. We're going to give you $5 million in cash up front. And we're going to give you $5 million worth of rollover equity in our holding company. So what that basically means is a good M&A attorney is going to do the buy side due diligence on where you're going to own that equity, what the operating agreement looks like, what your rights are, and really what the plan is. Because I would always recommend, if you're going to do a deal with a sophisticated private equity firm, get some rollover equity, because it's basically the difference of, do you want $5 million now, today, or do you want $5 million worth of our stock for when we spin this whole thing in 5 to 7 years, it's going to be worth 5 times that. And if you do your diligence and you look at the projected financials and you look at the strategy and you make sure your client has the right rights under the operating agreement or the shareholders agreement, that's a real economic boon for your sell side client. But let's go to earnouts. So earnouts are basically conditional consideration. And the intent of it is, hey, we're giving you a really good company that's on the rise, like Dr. Steve's chiropractic practice. We're buying offices, we got clients, we got specialties, we're on the rise. So if we give you this company and it continues to rise in revenue and in value, we want a piece of that, because you're getting the consideration from it. If we continue to rise over a certain percentage, then we're going to get a piece of it. For example, I just did a deal. I just did an earnout calculation, $20 million company. They bought it. And I did a 3-year earnout that if their EBITDA went up more than 5% each year, they would get an extra $800,000 every year. And we negotiated back and forth, and we did what's called a tranched EBITDA. So if the EBITDA went up a certain percentage of that bucket of $800,000, you would get a percentage of that. So say the EBITDA went up, say $800,000 is the 100% marker for that. Say the EBITDA went up, 74% for that year. Well, then my client gets 74% of $800,000 for that year. And we did it as a 3-year tranche for that period. So the horror stories that I see with earnouts are when you don't protect yourself. Because remember, a buyer is going to take over the operations of your company. You're not going to have full control over your financials anymore. So you need to bake into your purchase agreement certain language that basically states that the buyer is not going to materially or detrimentally affect us getting this earnout. Meaning they're not going to change the business processes. They're not going to change everything around. So we're never going to be able to achieve this earnout. So you need to negotiate that in whatever they do going forward. They're going to keep the company where these processes, these calculations, how the company is run, we have the ability to achieve the earnout that we negotiated at closing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so critical to have that, or like have some sort of like a first opportunity to step in, or if they tank it to a certain revenue line, you can step back in and take over the property, or take over not the property, the business, or something along those lines, to make sure that that they don't run it into the ground. Because you see, like when Quicken Loans sold, like Dan Gilbert sold Quicken Loans for $1.5 billion, and then private equity ran it into the ground. Dan Gilbert, I think he either had the opportunity to buy it back, or he just did go and buy it back for like $100 million, and then ran it back up to a $3 billion company or whatever they're doing. So, yeah, I mean, you see that stuff quite a bit, and making sure that, some of the private equity does a phenomenal job. They're very sophisticated business folks, and then other ones just have access to a bunch of money, and they're a bunch of paper pushers who have a bunch of capital, and they're just trying to throw it at deals, but they're not real good operators. And so sometimes you see a little bit of that blowback. So just making sure that the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. You got attorneys reviewing all that stuff and looking at every way of, how do I get screwed in this if I do have an earnout, or I do carry back, like making sure that you're covered. So
Yeah, and just one more point real quick, Tim. I mean, another thing that you always need to be aware of as a seller is when you have an earnout, it's like when you go back to 8th grade algebra class, you're like, oh, I got the answer. Well, you got to show your work. So when a buyer says, oh, by the way, sorry, here's the number, you didn't hit your earnout, they have to show how they got to that number. And you have the ability, you should have the ability within your purchase agreement to review the number, refute it if you need to. And if there is a dispute, then you bring in a third party who makes a binding decision as to whether that's been achieved or not. So you can't give the buyer the full authority to just be like, yeah, we looked at this, here's the number, you didn't make it. You got to see the work, you got to be able to analyze it yourself to make sure you're protecting your rights for that conditional consideration.
Smart, man. And like, I mean, these are little nuggets that can mean millions, if not tens of millions of dollars for somebody when they go to exit their business. So got to have the professionals on your side. So Ted, appreciate you being here. Steve,
My pleasure, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, man. Steve, leave us with some parting wisdom as you're scaling up your business. Give me the one or two things that you wish you would have implemented a little bit earlier that you didn't, or things that you did the right thing and you're glad you did it because now it's helping you scale up.
I guess, you know, you get so busy with making a job and making the office busy, like you'll like, oh, I'll deal with all that other stuff later, right? At least for me, I was like super excited about it, right? I wish I would have started this stuff earlier. And like he was talking about, like if you could have these bullet points where you're like, you just create your business and you have these set points and like really it just helps you create some awareness at certain things that, you know, to stay organized right away. I think that would have been huge.
Well, it's just questions that you didn't even know to ask, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
As we're growing in business, I was good at operating real estate, and then I needed to get good at operating a business as opposed to just operating, being the real estate guy. And so having somebody like Ted on your team and having access to kind of their checklist of due diligence items and what any buyer, it's not just for the sale. If you're looking to sell, it's for just efficient operations. This is how a good business is run and the things that you need to make sure that you have in place. So good stuff, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you being here. And
thanks for having me on. It's great.
Yeah, man. Excited. And so what I'd like to do now is pivot over. I think we can be bringing on Tyson Cobb and Justin Cook in order to talk a little bit more about how they've been. Well, Tyson actually has exited his practice, and I think he sold about 5 years ago, and is still working with them on a part-time basis, but has gone really heavy in the real estate side of things. Tyson, welcome, buddy.
Thanks, brother. Happy to be here. Appreciate the invite. You're looking good.
You're looking sharp as always, my man. I'm excited to see you next week.
Keep a jacket on so you can't see how shape I am.
Yeah, right, dude. You are stacked all the time. I can see your muscles through the jacket. That's how stacked you are. Good for you. And Justin Cook out of the Quad Cities, Iowa area, owns a couple of insurance offices and is consistently one of the highest producers in that insurance world. So excited to have both of you guys here. And what I want to do is I want to start with Justin and ask you a little bit about your business, how you went from one insurance. I think you have 3 offices, right?
I have 2 now. I did have 3 at one time.
Had 3, have 2 now. And then you've been passively investing. You've invested in a couple of our deals and looking at some other projects and stuff too. Talk a little bit about how you've started to make that transition, not a full transition, but how you started to take your good income and then start building long-term wealth and what that was like psychologically for you and kind of the information that you were looking for, the resources, the connections, and how you started making those, like taking those steps.
Yeah, actually, I started as a team member about 20 years ago. And so it's been a huge transition over time. You know, I'll get to your question, but you start as a team member when you're 23 out of college and you learn the actual business, the product side of insurance. And then I did that for 2.5 years and then went into agency and been an agency for 16 plus years. And so as I grew from 1 office to 2 offices and then 3 offices and then consolidated a third with a second, you learn through those different transitions, leadership. You have a lot of pain when you expand. And so when you're myself at 23 years old, was very like this, right? I was trying to learn the game. And then when I went to 2 offices, I had to learn leadership. I had to learn how to coach better. I had to, do things totally different, think totally different. And then I got into a large amount of life insurance planning with wealthy and real estate investors. And that took me to know the real estate game. I met Tim through one of my clients, introduced me to Tim. And so that's changed. Being in Tim's circle now and part of legacy has changed my mindset again, right? And so one thing I wanted to kind of clarify is that, Tim, I don't actually, with the company that I'm with, we're a mutual company, so I don't actually own the asset, which is a huge deal. And so when I met with Tim, over the last 2 or 3 years of doing syndications and being an investor with Tim, one of the things that I keep getting asked when I'm around his circle is, how much can you liquidate? How much is your business worth? And, from an income standpoint, I'm very blessed. And we have had significant growth over the years, but I can't liquidate. So that has led me into a position to become a real estate professional, which is a huge transition from being in insurance, specialized in life insurance and some other things, right? So now what I'm doing is putting most of my time into leading my insurance practice and coaching team, but also spending a lot of time in the real estate world and, quite honestly, learning. The last 60 days, I put a lot of spending time with the right people on these calls and in person and lunches, and narrowing down what Tim said earlier is what's going to be my niche. I know in insurance, I was very niche oriented. We have all these different things, but I became really good at this, and that worked really well for me. And so same thing with real estate is what fits my personality. So now I'm transitioning. The real estate professional is a huge deal if you don't understand this. And I'm not a CPA. I'm not going to dive into it. But if you have a high income and you're looking to offset, from a tax standpoint and build wealth, you need to understand that very well, because all these years, quite honestly, I could have transitioned to this point quicker if I would have known the things that I know today. Blessed to have that journey, but I'm super excited about starting to build real estate and being able to have cash flow long term, because my business is still scalable, but when you don't own it and you're putting all your time, your energy, and your resources into something you don't own, now that's like, what were you doing, Justin? Like that's that. But that's because of Tim's room, of other people's rooms that I've started to associate with. And so, the whole goal of what I look at it is using income from my insurance practice to build long-term wealth.
Yep. I think there's a lot of good things you said there that I want to kind of unpack. A couple of them is you don't own the business, right? Like you're an insurance agent, but you don't own the actual company. So although you make great fast money and you can make residual income, you are kind of handcuffed to that business, where it's like, I see some business owners that just focus on the fast money, but they don't have the enterprise value. They don't have the long-term wealth building. And that's what I'm trying to convey here, especially with that first section when we open up talking about, hey, one thing that you could do is you could buy the building that your insurance agency is run out of, and you've had it for 20 years. If you would have done that earlier on, then all of a sudden you got a free and clear building that's worth $1.5 million. You got 3 of those that are each worth $1.5 million, almost free and clear, or they are free and clear. And that's $4 or $5 million of net worth of enterprise value, of real wealth that you built on top of having the income. So that's something to pay attention to. I've talked to, I know someone here in Charleston who owns, I think they own 2. I think it's really hard to get multiple Chick-fil-A's. They own at least 2. They might have 3. They've owned it for a long time, and they print money. but you think because you own Chick-fil-A, oh my gosh, but they don't actually own it, right? If anything happens to them, they just replace that person, and they don't have anything that they can hand out of their estate. They don't have anything that they can pass along to their spouse or to their kids, and they don't have anything to sell from an enterprise value in the future. So it's really important that you figure out how do you build that enterprise long-term wealth if you're in a high income position. I think that, buying your building is a big one. And two, what you're doing is hey, if I can buy my building, great. If not, I can go find other real estate investments and start taking this money you've passively invested in order to kind of get a feel for how things are structured, hopping on the calls, having conversations, and then leaning deeper and deeper into that. And the tax side is a big deal. So
yeah, and I took
good
your advice. I took
insights.
your advice, Tim, and I'm in the early processes of trying to purchase the strip mall that I'm in. I think there's 13 different tenants. I own the other office that we built that in 2012, but we talked in Arizona, I went back and took action, and hopefully, it's kind of weird how things work out, but they're actually willing to sell this year. So we'll see where that goes, but
It's
maybe
simple,
reaching
right?
back out.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to have the conversation. You got to create the awareness, and then you got to take a couple pieces. The action's not that hard, other than getting over your own, self-limiting beliefs of just having the conversation, realizing you can't say the wrong thing to the right person, and if they want to sell, they're going to be open to selling. And I think that's a great way to start building that long-term wealth. So good stuff there. Tyson, I want to ask you some stuff because I know you sold your practice and you're very active in real estate. I think you're in 40, 50 deals, some as a GP, some as an LP. You're very active in the real estate side of things, raising money, taking deals down, doing a lot of good stuff on that front. Talk a little bit about how did that transition look for you? How long have you been in real estate? Were you doing that for a while you were a doctor? And I think you sold in 2019, about 5 years ago, right? Tell me a little bit about your story and what that was like psychologically, kind of making that transition into real estate.
Yeah, so I left my group in 2019, had a nice buyout from that, and started following you shortly after that. Did the commercial empire several times, got comfortable in the space. Started out with triple net, which is a pretty easy place to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as easy as limited partner because you're in charge of everything. So if you do go that route, you're going to have a few sleepless nights. But if you want to be in the driver's seat, that's kind of an easy way to get in. And then moved on into multifamily and syndications, and just do a ton of multifamily, self-storage, car wash, and variety of other investments. And, I think the hardest part is just getting started. Once you get started and you gain a little confidence, you get in groups like yours, you get to meet people, you have somebody you can pick up the phone and call when you're not sure about this investment or whatever, and it kind of allows you to get through. My first investment, I just spoke with someone who had been doing the triple nets before, and he helped me get started there. The second one, he and I actually JV'd on one. But the multifamilies and self-storage and the syndications, they have the advantage you can go either route. You can either go into the GP if you want to be actively involved, or you can go LP, and I do both. There's no way I could GP on all of the investments that I'm in because I'm in too many. So when you lock and load on one of those, even if you're just noted as the capital raiser, as you know, you're committed to be actively involved in all aspects. So I'm on Zoom calls with those deals, and they fill your schedule up pretty quickly as a result. But I enjoy it. Like we just took down a 200 unit in San Antonio. I'm taking care of the Wi-Fi contract on that, and dealing with a couple different organizations. And something as simple as Wi-Fi, we're going to add probably about $1.5 million on the exit value of the property, which, as you know, it's easy to scale these 200 unit compared to single families.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. So is that you guys are worked with a local cable company and a local service provider in order to install Wi-Fi throughout the property for the tenants, or is it like a cell phone tower that's on top that you're having installed, so that way they're kind of like renting space from you?
Yeah, so we're actually looking at 3 different options. They all net out something pretty close to the same. There's one option where you can actually have your own cable put in, you own it.
Mhm.
You can go through a company that kind of negotiates that. So they're basically like brokers. And then the third is going directly to whoever the company is and negotiating a bulk rate. So it's a lot easier for them. The company we're looking at only has 20% penetration. So it's, it's a big win for them if they can come in and get 100% of the penetration. As a result, they give you a steep discount
Mhm.
to take all 200 units with one check. And we're able to actually provide the Wi-Fi, better Wi-Fi service, cheaper than what they can get it on their own, and still get enough of a cut out of the deal to add about $1.5 million on the exit value, depending on what the cap rate is at that time. So it's truly a win-win. It just takes a little time for the footwork and negotiate the deal.
Love it, man. No, it's amazing. So what has it been like? Because I mean, you still work a couple days a week, right? On the doctor side?
I'm operating 1 day a week.
Operate 1 day a week, and otherwise you're focused on um that side. And so, and you do that. Why do you stay and continue to operate on a or on a weekly basis?
Orthopedic surgery is a lot of fun when you get to do it on your own terms.
Yeah.
So when I left my group, left the hospital, went off call, that was a huge game changer for me. And as you know, you invited Brian Scrone to the Denver meeting.
Mm-hmm.
His book on the 5 F's, faith, family, friends, finance, and fitness. He teaches to be intentional about those things. There was no way I could be intentional about those things prior because I was just too busy in orthopedics. And, once things slow down and you get your time back, your quality of life goes up. And then if you're intentional about that, it's a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%, man. It's um, doing it on your own terms, right? And then because you can do it on your own terms, it's like the deal that you don't have to sell, but you want to sell it, but you don't have to sell it. Whoever has to make a deal happen typically doesn't make a good deal happen. If you don't need the deal to happen, then typically you get the best terms out of that deal, right? And so putting yourself in a position where, hey, I don't have to work 1 day a week, but they desperately want you to work 1 day a week. You could probably get a premium. You could, work on your hours whenever you want, take another week off or whatever. And it puts you in a much better position, but you got to be have the confidence and the posture in order to then be able to negotiate those terms. So that's a great place to be. How is it because I know you raised some capital too. How is it raising capital from people? Do you raise a lot of money from white collar professionals? Do you raise money from everybody? How has that conversation been, and how have you approached those people? I would think. I'll let you answer, and then I'll offer feedback.
It's a lot of white collar. So, I mean, I just kind of stumbled into that. I had no intention of moving into capital raise, none whatsoever. And I teamed up with Gabe, who's in your group, on a deal in San Antonio as an LP. And shortly after that, I found an 85 unit that I was considering taking down. So I reached out to Gabe and said, hey, would you be interested in trying to help me syndicate this deal? And he said, sure. So we worked on it for 4 to 6 weeks, and it wasn't a good deal. We walked away from it. And he said, I can tell you're wanting to do the GP thing. He said, why don't you just join our team on the thing you're already investing in? I said, that's cool. Well, what do you want me to do? He said, well, for starters, can you raise capital? I'm like, I don't know. I never thought about raising capital. Let me make a few phone calls. And people are looking for good deals. When I first entered this market, it was very difficult to find good deals.
Mm-hmm.
Because they tend to get snatched up pretty quickly, and they're diluted by a lot of bad deals.
Mm-hmm.
So, to have access to really good teams and good deals with good returns, it's not hard to sell this stuff. You don't have to sell it; just make it available to people that are capable of making a decision. The biggest barrier that I see for most white collars, especially surgeons, they're so busy they don't have time to actually think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know I was there for a long time, and if I was going to encourage physicians and white collars on this call that aren't doing any of this, to do one thing as you preach, invest in your own education and get started somewhere. because real estate's like planting trees. The best time is yesterday and the next best time is today. And if, you know, a year from now, you wish you'd started today. And it, you know, it grows, and it makes a huge difference on how quickly you grow wealth. And, you know, money's not everything, but, you know, it is something. And I had a banker reach out to me last year, which they do every year. They wanted a personal financial statement updated. So I go into my computer, and you guys probably have the same thing. You look in there and you've got a jillion different personal financial statements by year, right? And I thought, you know, it'd be kind of fun to just track that and graph it and see how it's changed, because I knew it had changed drastically. I just wasn't sure how much. So I pull a bunch of those out and graph them. And the slope of the line for the period of time before I left my group, so I'm working full time, and it looks about like this. You know, I'm steadily making money and growing. So this is
Over how long of a timeline?
you know, so I just tracked it from 2014 to 19.
Okay.
Yep. And, you know, this is me working full-time as an orthopedic surgeon, going full bore and investing in the stock market. 2019, when I went into real estate and started to control some taxation, you know, it kind of went up about like that. And then finally, when I went heavily into syndications, it went like that. So if you do the math on the line, it was 12.5x. Doing what I'm currently doing right now compared to what it was like working full-time as an orthopedic surgeon and investing in the stock market. And so it's so counterintuitive. You know, you work less and you make more, which is the, you know, the whole concept of the 10x is easier than 2x. And it kind of falls into the same category as Cunningham's The Road Less Stupid. He repeatedly between every chapter, at the end of every chapter, says, now go think, you'll thank me later. And that's a reality. I mean, life just has to slow down enough so that you can spend some time actually thinking about your opportunities. Because if you don't look for opportunities and you don't accept opportunities when they come along, I mean, I see tons of physicians that look at this stuff and they're just so busy they don't have time to make a decision on it. And, you know, I understand it. I was there, but it's one of those things that, you know, if you can just turn the corner and get involved and then start seeing how much it changes your lifestyle, even if you're still working full time, you can go ahead and get that ball rolling, and it's a game changer.
I agree 100%, man. I think the key is, how do you get them started, right? And if they can't carve out the time themselves in order to look at deals or actively pursue deals, the thing that comes to my mind is finding the who, right? Finding a person that you trust, finding a person that you respect, finding a person who has the experience, and just say, hey, let me put a couple bucks over here and I'll pay attention to it a little bit. Right now, it's like anything. It's I had a free event right in Cleveland, Ohio last summer, and Mark Evans there. I had a whole bunch of legacy family people up on stage. I had like tons of insights, people who had run $100 million funds and all this stuff, but it was free. And people don't pay attention to things when they're free, typically, you know, versus if you make them pay, then they pay attention. And I try to put myself in that position. If I want to learn something new, I don't want somebody to teach me for free. I'm going to go and pay money in order to do it. If I'm going to go and want to learn, you know, triple net lease, I'm going to go and put some money into triple net lease, because that's going to make me pay attention to it as I'm pursuing those deals and trying to figure some things out. And I think, you know, if you got a couple of bucks and you want to learn real estate, put a couple dollars into an investment property and do what Justin Cook did, right? And then all of a sudden, now you start paying attention. Now you start asking a few more questions. Now you start learning about taxation. Now you start learning about full-time real estate professional status. Now, and it just, you start paying attention on things. So I think that's a great, takeaway from what you just said. Justin, how does it look now as you're pursuing different deals? First of all, give me some feedback. How many deals have you invested in as an LP, as a limited partner?
Four on the LP side over the last, I think, about 4 years.
Okay, so for those, and then you're actively, you own your one property, you're trying to buy your other property. What does it look like over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, so I have a couple of farms, so I have some farm income and some different real estate that's not into actual normal what we talk about. But I think, Tyson said it best, is where you're so, as him as a surgeon, he's head down doing surgeries, right? Same way here, I've always been a top producer in my field. And a lot of that lies to me because of connections and experience. And so when I've opened up that time, and literally, I'm blessed to have a renewal income model as insurance, right? And I don't have to, physically do anything with my hands. I've built that renewal model. But what I've done is I've totally, met with my team and said, hey, this is my goal. I'm changing a few things. I'm going to put some focus over here, family, and also building real estate and coaching. And so once I started focusing in and really putting the time, Tim, with, your group, I joined Legacy, right? I can tell you just from that alone, in 2 months, when you pay for things, you do pay attention, right? I also hired a coach, a professional coach that wasn't cheap, right? Probably one of the bigger checks I've written. He's challenging me. I got a call with him this afternoon. So where you're putting your mindset, where you're developing yourself, are you investing in you? I'm going to be coaching as well, and that's an active income piece, but I enjoy it. Right. I enjoy doing that. Kind of like Tyson said, it sounds like he enjoys doing that when he has some control. Right. I enjoy doing the coaching piece. So next 12, 24 months, Tim, my goal is to, at least be involved in 3 different deals by the end of the year. More on the GP side. I'm focusing more on that triple net lease, as I've studied all the different asset classes in the last 90 days. And for my personality and what I want to be involved in, Tim, you said it earlier, I want business to business. I don't think my personality right now would, even if I had built a team on the multifamily side, I think it could be challenging for me. And so that's where I'm starting now. I may change that in the future. But like you said, you have to start. And Tim, that, knowing me 3 or 4 years, I am an action-oriented person. I will take action. I will learn, take action, and repeat. Right. And so it's exciting I will tell you this, though, in my world that I was in and the world that I'm moving towards, everything moves so much slower because it's so much bigger, right? Like the learning piece, number one, I had to spend time learning, which doesn't really, you're planting those seeds you speak of, right? You're not seeing results, but I know because of experience, the results come, right? And so I'm learning, but, for example, let's just say, we produce 300 policies a month in agencies, right? That's a lot of transactional activity that you get dopamine, like, yeah, we're winning, right? This is different. Like when you're trying to buy a strip mall, and when you're talking in millions,
it's a slow process.
Things do not move as fast as I was used to, right? But what I do know is what talking to people like Tyson, once you get going and you're in the networks and you're in the inside of the deals and you're spending time with the right people, that's when I see it like a snowball, right? And I know that will come because it worked that way in the insurance world, right? So, and a lot of that, kudos to you, Tim, kudos to you, letting me be in on the inside of some of those things, because that has helped me tremendously from a mindset. My habits. I have deep habits, deep rituals, and all I had to do is just shift my mind of where I was actually spending time.
Yeah, I think as each of you guys talk, I keep on thinking about how you can be the bridge, right, from one industry into another industry. You've already invested the time, you've invested in the network, you've invested in the deals, you've invested into the resources and all those things. And it's like, there's a lot of doctors, right? I think most doctors, most dentists, my one buddy always tells me, like, doctors and dentists don't like consultants. Like, it's known that we hate consultants, that consultants, like, just take your money and they don't do anything, they don't perform. But it's like, how can somebody who's a doctor trust a real estate investor? And I think you guys, right? Or how can somebody who's in insurance trust somebody who's in real estate? Obviously, Justin, you can go to the other people who are insurance now and raise money in order to then deploy it into real estate because you're the bridge. Tyson can go and raise money from doctors and dentists because he's a medical professional and they trust him, and he has the insights in order to go, and the resources and the connections in order to then go and deploy that capital into real estate deals. So, I think it's a great position to be in order to kind of lean into and be the bridge from one industry into another industry and say, hey, I know what you're going through. I went through it as well. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I've found. And let's go, roll some money over here. And let's go do this over here. Because you can relate, you can associate with them that on things that I could never relate to them with. And I think that's a really critical part, and a thing that all white collar professionals can do is reach out to people who are already in your network, who's making money. Maybe they don't have the time, maybe they don't have the resources, they don't have the education, and you can be the bridge for them to help get into real estate. You can raise capital that way and then deploy it into more deals, and then all of a sudden everybody's winning, everybody's building more wealth. And so I think that's a great position to be in, and educating people who are already in your pre-existing industry about a new industry, because everybody's interested in real estate, everybody's interested in wealth building. It's just they don't know and they don't trust most people who are conveying that information or trying to convey that information. So it's good stuff. So bringing it full circle, Tyson, what's a piece of advice that you can share with somebody who's in the medical field on how to get going, how to get started, how to if they're busy, they don't have the time, like how would you advise one of your best friends who's in the medical field, who wants to, you see him spinning their wheels, you see him on the hamster wheel and just never getting off of it? What advice are you giving that person in order to be like, listen, let's just try it, just start something new? What's the easiest path of least resistance in order to start building long-term wealth for them?
You just have to commit to make a change and make a move and join groups. I'm happy to have a conversation about the different types of asset classes that we get into. The interesting thing right now about today is, stocks are up and real estate is down. And as Warren Buffett says, when everybody's running out, that's kind of when you want to be running in. And I'm not suggesting that you want to throw money at the real estate market willy-nilly right now, but there's some really good deals to be had out there. That one we picked up in San Antonio, we got that at a 25% discount. So there are some good deals. Some folks are upside down with this variable rate interest. And so if you're looking for good deals, they're to be had now. So now's a great time to do it. If you're heavily invested in stocks and you want to make a transition and diversify, get rid of some of those and swing the bat and get involved. And just make a commitment to do something every year. I think if you just, even for the people that are in an early phase of their practice, that's a perfect time to just make a commitment to just get in as an LP into some type of investment, self-storage, multifamily, farm ground. I mean, we do a lot of different asset classes, and I think that's a good way to go. And if you're just consistent and continue to invest, your portfolio will grow. And before you know it, you're going to be seeing some fairly significant results from money that you earn while you're sleeping.
I love it, man. I agree 100%. Thank you for being here, Tyson.
Thanks for the invite.
Justin, bring us home. Give me a single piece of advice that helped you get one foot out the door and then into this new industry, and a piece of advice that you can give someone who was in your shoes 5 years ago. What's the one thing, the most important thing that they could be doing right now and take action on in the next 30 days?
I think the one thing is hang around the right people. Hang around the Tim Bratzes of the world. Do not be intimidated. Do not be fearful. Tim puts his pants on the same way Justin does. He may be worth a little bit more, just tad. But it's the law of attraction, right, Tim? I mean, we talked about it a couple years ago at the Mountain Home we're partners on. You will become who you spend time with, right? And I've seen that on the insurance side. Now I'm seeing it on the real estate side. I would also, if you want to be good in real estate or you want to be good at anything, hire a coach, spend money, spend money in that direction. Bypass the car that you want to buy for 30,000 and go put that same $30,000 on somebody that is willing to help you, that wants to help you and will shortcut, all the nightmares and the pains and everything that, that's what I'm doing on real estate. I joined Tim's group. I hired a coach. And so the amount of knowledge and the education that I'm getting in the last, 90 days is drastic, more than I've ever gotten in many years. It's all been insurance related. And I was very good at that because that's where I was focused. I think it can be just like anything, right? Any business, anything that you do new, you're fearful, it's new, you have to be vulnerable, right? Say, I don't know, I want help, right? Ask questions. One bite at a time, and I know that's more than what you asked for, Tim, but I think that people get so, like, they look at the whole elephant, right? You cannot eat an elephant all at once. You got to take off a foot, right? You got to take that one. And then build that foundation one step at a time and be very, very, very aware of your daily habits. How do you start your day? What do you do? What do you think about? My advice is to start with gratitude. I do it every single day I wake up. And be intentional with your time. Do not let the day run you. You have to run your day. And that's possible. Now, things happen, but it's definitely possible. So that's more than but those are just things, that's, I think, not even real estate, just kind of a life. And they work in insurance, but you will get what direction you face, you will get what you focus on. Just make sure you're focused on something.
Yeah, man. I think you make a good point. Like, I try to psych myself out. Like, again, going back to, I invested 30 grand into the first mastermind that I went to. And I was like, if I'm investing 30 grand, I'm going to make sure I get an ROI on this thing. And not only did I make my money back, I made 10 times my money back inside 10 months of being in that group because of actual tangible deals that I closed. But then more importantly, looking back now, it was 10 years ago into my first mastermind, 9 years ago. And how it's compounded. The relationships have compounded, the knowledge is compounded, the insights have compounded, and not only that, but all the people in that group have all made more money over the past 9 years, and so now they're funneling more money in, and it's making it easier. And to your point that you had mentioned before, is like getting anything started. Starting the snowball is the hardest part, right? It's getting the plane off the ground is the hardest part. But once it's up, now it uses a fraction of the fuel in order to stay up as it takes to get off the ground. So that's life, that's business. If you can get it off the ground, then you hit this momentum piece. And the reality is, I talk about it, it's 10,000 hours. There's scientific data behind it that you need to dedicate 10,000 hours to any activity before you become an expert at that activity. So at 10,000 hours, that's 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That's only 2,000 hours in a year on a full-time effort. So you got to give it 5 years of a full-time effort to become really an expert at any given thing. And it's why a lot of people, I think, I know why a lot of people don't get ahead. It's because they don't become an expert at any given thing. And they jump ship every 2 years, 3 years. They jump jobs because they never became an expert, never got to the easy point. And every single time they jump, or every time they start a new business, or every time they chase a shiny object, they press reset. They start over again, and all right, start back at zero, and now you need another 10,000 hours, and they never dedicate that amount of time, and so they never get ahead. They spend their entire life in the hardest part of trying to get the snowball rolling. If they would have just stayed focused on one thing, and I think, whatever your industry is, just focus on that, and then make sure that there's fast money, make sure there's long-term wealth. And those two things make a big difference. So good stuff, brother. Well, dude, thank you for being here. I appreciate all the insights. Excited to see you in New Orleans next week.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Tim.
And now we're going to bring it home with Mr. Paul Vincent and Mr. Patrick Baran, who are here. Paul is a real estate attorney, and he and I don't know, I've probably known Paul for I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years now.
Too long.
Too long. And he's done a lot of real estate stuff. Yeah, it's been amazing to see him grow from just, only doing the legal side of things to now partnered in hundreds of units, helping people raise money, has his own community that he's teaching people how to structure deals, creative finance, a lot of really cool stuff that he's got going on. And I would assume wealth has been created and net worth has grown substantially since you've kind of made some of those pivots. So welcome, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, man. It's this group, even though I was a licensed lawyer, I didn't know any of this stuff worked either. So for anybody that's here meeting this guy for the first time, I mean, there's a lot of people that have been just like you and, do a couple things, spend a couple hours learning stuff and building up your network. Yeah, you can.
Agreed. Agreed, man. Now you just got to put in the time, right? In order to then, again, become that expert. So appreciate you being here, buddy. And then Patrick, excited to see you, man. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Tim.
You're an engineer, right?
Yes, I am an engineer by education.
For some reason, I had architect also, but it's fun. Yeah, but that's right, civil engineer. And so still employed, right? COVID hit. You had the opportunity to then work remotely, kind of gave you some opportunities to move around a little bit, and you were already doing some real estate stuff. Maybe share a little bit about your background being in a white collar profession, right? And then how you've been able to parlay that income, parlay your time and insights and resources in that world, and how you've been able to build up your real estate portfolio.
Sure. So my background is kind of purely if you ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, sort of the poor dad mindset. I was raised by parents who stressed education just over, almost everything. Go to college, get your job in your cubicle, and work until you're 65 years old, and then retire. They were not entrepreneurs. No one in my family was an entrepreneur. They both worked at the same job for their whole careers, and they kind of taught me that was the path. So I did what they said was the right thing, the right path, went to college, got great grades, got a job as an engineer, started working as an engineer, and realized that it wasn't all that I thought it was cracked up to be. It wasn't this amazing life. I thought after college, I'd get this job, I'd start making a ton of money. I thought college was the hard part, and the part where I had to knuckle down, but it turns out there wasn't a huge light at the end of the tunnel like I thought there was going to be. And so all through my first kind of 5 years working as an engineer, I was kind of coming to the realization that this path that I was put on, that I was told was the right path, was actually not something that was right for me. I remember the kind of light bulb moment came for me when I was putting in a lot of hours, really high performer at my job, and I went for my yearly raise, and my boss says, here's your 3% raise, Pat. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I thought my salary was going to go up like 20% or something. I thought I was going to climb the ladder of the corporate world, get all these pay bumps and be living the good life. But that's not the case. It takes a long time to kind of climb that corporate ladder. And I just wanted something that was faster, and I wanted to be rewarded more for the effort and the benefit I was giving the company than what I was getting. And so that was like an eye-opening experience that, I'm putting in all this work and I'm not getting compensated how I feel like I should, and I'm not on the path that I want to be. So that's when I started looking into real estate. I was actually living with a couple of guys who were entrepreneurs at the time. They opened my eyes to the fact that, okay, there's this other path outside of the corporate world where you can start your own business and kind of grow as fast as you can work and as productive as you can be. And so they kind of showed me that there's this alternative path. So, started buying real estate, slowly bought a duplex, then partnered with a childhood friend. We bought a triplex, and started growing a little bit of the real estate business. And at that point, I realized that it was real and I could actually make money outside of this W-2 world that was everything to me. And I thought was the only path. And at that point, I was able to kind of downshift my job a little bit, and refocus on my effort from my engineering job, where I've been putting 100% of my effort, just kind of killing myself with not much reward, into my real estate. And so that shift allowed me to I really slowed down I actually literally haven't gotten a promotion since I started really advancing in real estate, but I didn't really care. And so that shift of energy allowed me to kind of slow down my advancement in my white collar engineering job, which I was fine with, but allow the real estate to kind of really take off. So that's kind of the start of the story there.
Yeah, I mean, what if did you have the time in order to start doing that, or like how did you find the time? That seems to be a recurring theme in a lot of the conversations. It's like you're so inundated where they have you working nonstop in a white collar profession. Whether I mean you didn't own your practice, right? A couple of the other guys actually own their business that we've had on here, and so when you own it, you want to be all in because you know that that's going to drive the most revenue. You didn't own the company, but typical white collar world is they have you working as much as possible so that way you're too busy to do anything else,
Yeah.
and they're paying you just enough to keep you comfortable but not enough to engage in your ambitions, right? So you don't want to leave but not enough where you're happy. And so where did you find the time in order to do that?
It's difficult. It was definitely difficult. And before I kind of realized that real estate could be something that I would make money at, and before I shifted my energy into real estate, I was essentially working 2 jobs. I was working my engineering job, 9 to 5, sometimes longer, and then come home at night and do real estate on my lunch breaks. I remember there was this little conference room across from my cubicle. Instead of going out to lunch with the team, I would just go into that conference room, take some calls, do some real estate on the weekends. Like I was working on real estate. So that was like probably about 2 years. So if you really have the passion, you'll find a way to make the time. But those first few years, it's really hard. You have to sacrifice. I mean, you're essentially working 2 jobs until you realize that your entrepreneurial job or path can actually make money. And at that point, I downshifted. I took actually a demotion for my engineering job. I was managing 12 engineers, really kind of fast-paced, stressful environment. And it wasn't necessarily even the time, it was the stress and the energy I had to dedicate to the engineering job that was distracting me from growing my engineering business or my real estate business. So for those first couple of years, until you realize that it's possible, you're kind of working 2 jobs and you just got to make time when you can.
Well, you're sacrificing other stuff, right? You're sacrificing the TV, you're sacrificing getting drunk on the weekends, you're sacrificing these other things that you understand aren't pouring into your future, right? And replacing that with something that will. And I think that's the key component here is like there's going to be sacrifices to be made. It's just what is the sacrifice going to be?
Exactly. There was definitely a lot of sacrifice those first couple of years, and you just have to keep your goal in mind. And every time I would think about how I was missing out on, going out with friends or missing out on going to lunch, I thought about how unhappy I was with just my engineering job, and that kind of motivated me to just knuckle down and do the work. So
good stuff, man. Paul, I think you have a really cool story because you found a way to create equity in long-term deals and create enterprise value from your fast short-term income, right? And you're an attorney and you're doing legal work, and you're doing business work, and you're doing estate planning, and then all of a sudden start looking at real estate, getting some real estate circles. Now you're doing some syndication paperwork, more of the real estate legal side of things. And then you were able to then say, hey, I don't want to be the active operator. But I have this skill set that's allowed me to earn equity into a given deal. And I know enough other people, and if you've used a lot of relationship capital in order to then earn equity into these real estate projects. So talk a little bit about that journey and that transition and how that's played out for you.
Yeah. I think all this stuff, you first got to start with the education side of things. You really have to understand first how everything kind of works and build up the network around that. And then when you do that, then figure out like, hey, well, what could I do to a potential team down the road? And if I want to start or build a team around me, like what would be my value? So we'd never done anything related to private placements or syndications or anything until we met Tim. We found, we realized that seems like a cool thing to do. So we found a mentor, we did all that. And the most of that came from just curiosity. Like I wanted to see what Tim was doing and how that worked. And then I, wanted to help him out to get his syndication rolling. So we found a guy and, latched onto Tim and latched onto this guy. And then we just figured it out and did it on our own. Mm-hmm. So I think that the first thing is you got to find something you're curious about. So you know, Patrick, very excited about real estate, so he figured out a way. If you're not excited to figure out how this stuff works, then don't pound your head against the wall to try to convince yourself this is something you're supposed to be excited about. Like if you're not, that's okay. It's going to be something else. But I think if you are excited about something and you're curious enough to figure it out, that is step one. Learn how to do it. There's so many stuff like this, you know, like 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, nothing like this was available without you putting $97 into a, you know, billing page on a ClickFunnels. There's so much free stuff out there. So anything that you want to learn about, how to syndicate deals, we have a free webinar for that. Want to go check out a mastermind? Like Tim's group allows for you to show up and give it a try, you know, not for free, of course, but that's what you should be doing, is just educating yourself, because unless you know what you're talking about, you'll never know what to be looking for. So.
Yep. I agree, man. I agree. So now you're doing syndication stuff for people, and then they say, well, Paul, I'm short on X number of dollars for closing on Friday, right? Can you help me out in this situation? And I think it just, sometimes it organically transitions. It organically happens like that, where you find yourself, because you're in the right room, because you're hanging out with the right people, because you're in the right positioning, people start coming to you. And then all of a sudden you realize, I know this person over here who's got some cash. I know this person over here who needs some cash. Maybe I can bridge the middle. Maybe I can earn some equity. Maybe I can, instead of taking a fee, you know, I don't know, maybe you make X number of dollars and enough money in the first 6 or 9 months of the year. In the last 3 or 4 or 5 months, you just take it as equity in deals and you pour it forward and say, hey, listen, I'll come in as an equity investor, or I'll come in and trade my expertise for equity in the deal. I think you've done a really good job of positioning yourself that way. So talk a little bit about how you've done that, and how to make sure that you're doing it with the right people.
Yeah. So first off, doing it with the right people, very important. I thought I had, and I am now working through a couple problems because it wasn't the case. So first things first.
By the way, we've all done that.
We're all
dealing with that.
There's a trust but verify. It's backwards. You gotta verify and then trust. Like you so anyway, it's a stupid learning lesson. And I do want to mention, like, you come onto these, you go to a conference, you come onto this, if this is your first time kind of trying to educate yourself or go to a source to learn things, it's going to come out like a fire hose, and you're going to leave like, oh my God, I'm so far behind. Like everybody knows this stuff. Like it doesn't take a long time, but it does take deliberate commitment to it. So if you're leaving today, make sure to commit to going to a conference, because you will build credibility by being the person that knows how to do these things. That's all I did. And I didn't know anything about it until like I mentioned earlier, I met Tim, and then I met this lawyer that did it for a living. If I wouldn't have met him and or the lawyer to do it, I don't think I'd be sitting here. But I was curious enough. It was something I was excited about. And then I just kind of carried it forward. So the best value you can provide is being a resource for something, whether it's you got a rich aunt or uncle, good for you. That'll carry you places. You know how these deals work. You're an insurance person, and you can be the insurance kind of underwriter for the opportunities. Many deals these days go south because either the insurance is too expensive, so they actually don't end up buying it. That's huge value, not to buy an overpriced asset, or you're wasting money, and you can be like, go into a group and be like, hey, add me to your team. I'll underwrite all your properties, and we'll see whether or not you're overpaying or underpaying or not even insuring it correctly. So when you understand how deals work and how real estate works, you can find something, you can find your special skill, and then you find yourself into participating more often than you would otherwise. Because I would, if I didn't have those two relationships and then learn from that, I would be just like everybody else on here, just trying to figure it out. And that's a struggle when you do it on your own. So.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of the commercial side of things. What I found is when, as soon as you start doing bigger deals, or you start talking about doing businesses,
it's all teamwork. Yep.
It becomes a team sport, right? And so there's a lot of people involved, and nobody needs to have all the expertises. You just need to know what your expertise is and what you're bringing to the table. And then you could figure out what that's worth to the deal. And it might be worth 2% equity. It might be worth 20% equity. It might be.
And I keep chiming in here. I keep thinking of good
Yeah.
stuff though. Like if you don't have, like, let's say you're just a stay-at-home parent and you don't think like, well, what do I even have? Because I haven't worked in 5, 10, 15 years or whatever. And now you're like, I want to figure out what to do now that my kids are out of the house. Be the person that like grows the community network, right? Like throw the networking event, have the greatest Garrettsville, Ohio commercial networking event. You will then be the king of that castle, whether you really know what you're doing anything or not. But that is a huge value, being able to bring people together, bring opportunities together. So that in itself,
because it gives you credibility
100%.
by somebody else bringing the value. But just
I
because
talk-
you organized it, you get all the credibility for somebody else that says really cool stuff. And then all of a sudden they look at you as the authority. And so
100%.
now there's trust, now there's respect, now
every
there's
time I
confidence
do
in you.
every time I do a PPM for someone, it's like their first deal, and they're like, I don't really have that big of a network, or I don't know if I'll be able to raise the money, whatever. I'm like, say something on Facebook now in your community, you're going to throw and buy one drink for the first 15, 20, 50 people, whatever. That'll be the best $200 you ever spend, because those people that do show up, they'll think that you're some sort of authority. And it's not to scam people into, believing. You can just say like, hey, I want to learn this stuff. I'm coordinating this stuff, and putting in that extra effort will give you huge credibility, like you said.
Dude, I think I have this conversation literally. I talked to Fatty about it yesterday, right? About something that went sideways. What do we tell so-and-so? I was like, honesty is the best policy, right?
Yep.
Across the board. I've said that, I don't even know, hundreds and hundreds of times to my team. Hey, honesty is the best policy. Honesty is the best policy. Just hit it in the head. If you lie about something or you try to be somebody that you're not, then all of a sudden you have to keep an image or follow that lie up with something else,
Sure.
as opposed to just doing the right thing. And just honesty is the best policy. Here's what's going on. And even if it's not good news, they're going to trust you more because you're sharing bad news. Right now, there's a good way of doing it is make sure it's sandwiched with good news as well, right? Here's the bad news, but here's how we're going to overcome. Here's the bad news, but here's something that to look forward to. Here's how there's the business plan moving forward or whatever. But to your point of like being new, okay, own it. Hey, listen, I'm looking to scale my real estate portfolio. I built some good money doing XYZ. I'm looking to leverage that into the real estate world. And I'm meeting with, Patrick Baran and Paul Vincent in order to come in and talk about how they've scaled their rental portfolios to hundreds of doors. If you're interested in coming and sitting in on it, we're going to have 20 seats. I'm buying first 2 rounds of drinks. Come out and we'd love to have you. Dude, own it. Right? Yep. Own that you're not the authority, edify somebody else. And then by you just creating that network, people are going to appreciate you because you took leadership, right? Like that alone shows that you have initiative, right? And a leadership in order to then attract other people. And that leadership leads to people wanting to invest with you, leads to people wanting to partner with you, leads to people wanting to sell you deals, buy deals from you. And be part of your community, and so just take the initiative. That's such a key part. Sure. And do it for, Patrick can go do it for a bunch of engineers, right? Hey, we're gonna be talking about how to build wealth as an engineer and then bring that money and that good income into real estate. We're gonna be doing it for doctors, or we're gonna be doing it for a group of dentists. And if whatever your profession is, lead the charge in that profession, because again, they relate to you like they would not relate to me. Who's this kid, right? His dad was a doctor, or his dad was a policeman, and he's just a real estate guy. Like, right. If you're a dentist and you put a group of dentists together and then introduce them to me, guess what? Now you create a bridge, and you are the medium in which all the value gets created, and then they want to then invest through you or into your deals because they learned from somebody else, right? Yeah. So I think that's a critical component. So, Patrick, what's it been like? Because here's the thing, man. You could walk away from your job tomorrow, right? You have enough income from your business and from your real estate holdings and the size of your portfolio. You bought it at great prices. You increased the value. You've created a lot of spread. You paid down principal. You've refinanced a fixed rate debt. There's a lot of good things that you've done in your portfolio over the past 5 years or so. Why do you maintain your primary job and your primary income? And why do you not jump all into real estate? What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? And how have you weighed that out?
Sure. So a lot of my entrepreneurial friends and colleagues still wonder why I have an engineering job. And they're saying, burn the boats, Pat, get come on, give that up. You'll grow your business faster. I think that works for some people, but for me, I wanted to kind of put all the money back into the business for the first 5 years. For the first 5 years that we had our business, none of the owners took a cent out of it. And that allowed the business to really snowball, give us a track record, give us a portfolio, where then we're able to attract investor money to come in. Whereas if we'd been kind of taking a salary, even if it was like $50,000 a year during those first few years, we would have really suffocated the business. And so I kept my engineering job as sort of that fast money, that immediate money, that check coming in every 2 weeks, so that I could then let the golden goose kind of continue laying eggs in the real estate side of things and grow and grow and grow. Because I knew the longer that I waited to take money from the real estate business, the faster it would grow and the bigger the reward at the end. So I really used that engineering salary as that fast money to pay the bills, to live off of. It also helped a lot with underwriting for getting loans. You know, banks would love to see, oh, you worked at your engineering job for 12 years? Great, we'll give you a loan easily, rather than if it's like, oh, I started this real estate business 6 months ago, it's all I do, can I have a $500,000 loan on it? And they're like, I don't think so. So it helped in those two respects. And then the third thing is I kept the job because I was able, once I had the real estate business going and was confident that it could produce money and I could rely on that if I needed to, it gave me leverage to change my engineering job into something I didn't mind doing, actually enjoy doing. So I was miserable when I had to rely on the engineering job. I had to work 60 hours a week, manage 12 engineers, run a bunch of high stress projects. But once then the entrepreneurial side took off, I went back to my boss. I said, hey, this isn't working for me. I want to take actually a demotion. I want to take a pay cut, and I want to work on just, they call it an individual contributor. I just want to be an engineer and work on some of the cool projects that I like to do. I don't want to manage anyone. I don't want to be running any projects. I'll contribute technically to these projects. And that's what I actually enjoy doing. That's why I got into engineering in the first place. It wasn't so I could run a team of 12 other engineers and worry about time cards and HR issues and everything like that. And so I was able to transform my engineering job into something that I really enjoy now. And I don't need to quit it. And I actually am fine keeping it for the foreseeable future because it's something manageable that I enjoy.
I love that, man. And I love that answer. I think it's you said a couple really good things, right? One is similar to what Tyson said. He's like, listen, now it's on my terms, right? I was on call before and I had to work X number of hours and I had to kind of make sure that I was carrying my weight because I was a part of the partnership, and there's a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of headaches and stuff that come with that. But if you could say, hey, I'm willing to step back. I'm willing to take less money. How many partners say I'm willing to take less money? How many employees say I'm willing to take less money? That doesn't happen. But here's the terms, right? And when you have the portfolio, when you have this other tranche of wealth that you've built, it allows you to posture up in a different way where a great boss, a great owner of that company sees a great employee that they don't want to lose. And even you working for them on a part-time basis is better than you not working for them at all. And they realize that and they appreciate that, man. I think that's it's a clear expectation setting piece. And that's really refreshing in this world where everybody's got their own angle and their own whatever that they're doing. It's like, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what I want. Here's what I don't want. And if we can make it work, let's do it. And if not, no sweat. So I think that's a big understanding. Second thing is you're like, I like doing it. Guess what? I like searching for deals, right? I have a chief marketing officer. I have an acquisitions director. I have support to help find and underwrite deals on an acquisitions team. But I just like doing it, man. I like diving in and checking out Zillow and checking out LoopNet and looking at opportunities and thinking what something is versus what it can be. And I like doing, so I still do that, right? I don't have to, but I like it. And so to your point and Paul said this multiple times, like you got to enjoy it. You got to excite you. It's got to be something that you want to do and you enjoy doing, which is a big one. And then the third thing that you mentioned, which I think carries a lot of weight that a lot of times we don't think about, is the bankability side of things. Like I can't get a single family residential loan because it's underwritten very differently than a commercial loan. Now I've got $200 million plus of commercial loans because it's all based on the asset and my experience. But on a residential side, dude, no mortgage broker wants to look at 60 different LLCs that I own and 60 different companies and amortization schedules and depreciation schedules and literally millions of dollars in and millions of dollars. Like I can't season all that stuff, and I'm not going to go through the process of saying what everything, every dollar in that's over $10,000, where it came from and where it went. Dude, it's not a realistic thing. But if I had a W-2, and listen, I'm not it depends on what your business model is too. But like you do Airbnbs and you buy some really cool vacation, like beach houses and stuff like that, where now it makes you more bankable to be able to qualify for that than somebody like me. And it gives you the ability to then win that bid because you have cheaper financing that I would have, because I have to get some asset-based loan that's 3% per year more on the interest rate. And it's just kind of, there's some different variables. So understanding where your value comes in, and that could also be something where, hey, we're buying this property under $1 million, and the local bank wants somebody, whatever, with a cleaner financial thing, and maybe it's something that you can sponsor the loan on and get 25% of that deal because you sponsored the loan, because you're more bankable than the entrepreneur who's been going for 2 or 3 years but doesn't have the predictable income that the bank wants to see or whatever. Like, that's another way that you can then bring value to a project. And on the larger commercial stuff, right? Maybe they're looking typically at larger commercial properties for somebody with experience, somebody with a net worth, and somebody with the liquidity. So if you're a wealthy doctor, or you're a wealthy dentist, or an engineer, or an attorney, and you have maybe the liquidity, or maybe you have the net worth, but you don't have the experience, you can still, there's other people who have the experience, but don't have the net worth and don't have the liquidity. A lot of times in real estate, people are either cash rich or cash poor, and very equity rich typically. And so they need somebody to then come in and co-sponsor the loan. And that's a way that you can start getting your foot in the door on some of these deals and get 10, 15, 20% equity in some larger apartment complexes in order to start building your long-term wealth as well. So I think those are all really, really good points. And as we kind of wind down here, I'd love to hear each of you guys offer some insight and offer kind of like an actionable step over the next 30 days. What is something that somebody could leave here and start building their long-term wealth? With some of like the best advice you can give them in order to start building either increasing their income in their day job, and figuring out how to increase that, how you save a little bit more money, and then how do you invest that money. Like, those are the 3 steps of building wealth: make money, save money, invest your money. Give me a piece of advice that's worked really, really well for you guys over the past few years that somebody could then start working on and tangibly see some results on that in the next 30, 60, 90 days. So Paul, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start first. So before the summer, do some sort of webinar to learn how this stuff works. So Commercial Empire, is that still up for sale?
We're not doing live Commercial Empires, but we are we're doing these, right? And we're doing like the master classes. So register for all the master classes when we get them going. We'll probably get them going again in April. Yeah.
So go through a webinar on how this stuff works from start to finish. If you want to get into multifamily, if you watch the multifamily webinar, you will understand basically how all real estate works, generally speaking. So do that. And then when the summer comes, commit to doing some networking. Like, you got to ingratiate yourself in the industry, in your community of people that do it, and just focus on building your network. If you start to learn, like if you go into the summer knowing more than you did today, and then you start going to the networking events, go to a conference or two, you will advance the ball. And it's going to be slow. Like, don't think you're going to be taking down 200 units, by the end of February. You need to know what you're doing first. So watch some stuff, learn some stuff, and then go meet some strangers and build those relationships, because that's where relationship capital is very close second to actual cash on getting things done. So.
Good stuff, man. Patrick.
Yeah, I'll piggyback a little on what Paul said. I would say find someone who is where you want to be in 3 to 5 years and take them out to lunch, and just talk to them. I know for me, the biggest hurdle was not working harder or being smarter. It was breaking that mental barrier that this is actually possible and this is something that you can do. Because if you're in the W-2 world, you're surrounded by other W-2 employees who that's all they do, you know, and you know, you're not going to be able to understand that that's possible until you are surrounded by people who have done it before. So for me, I remember I would read about real estate all the time. I would always be on Zillow before bed for like an hour looking at deals, but I never took any action until my wife told me that, hey, you're interested in real estate? You know, my boss, who was actually a pharmacist, he owns 20 apartments in Boston. Why don't you have a conversation with him? And so I did. I sat down with him, and I remember telling him what I wanted to do. I want to buy a duplex. I want to get into real estate. And the first thing he said to me is, "Oh, yeah, Pat, you can easily do that. You're a smart guy. That's easy. Here, let me give you some advice." And by him saying that's easy, you can do that, rather than, you know, everyone else, you know, who in the W-2 world saying, "Oh, that's impossible. That's too hard. No, don't do that." By him saying it was easy and kind of holding my hand and sort of jumping into the pool with me, so to speak, that broke down that mental barrier.
Breaks the glass ceiling, man. You're
exactly,
like, you know,
everyone here is
Oh, it's
smart
huge.
enough to, if you're working a white collar job, you're educated enough, you're smart enough, you're hardworking enough, you have the ability to learn. Real estate isn't rocket science. You guys have all those skills. You just need to break that mental barrier. And I think seeing someone or connecting with someone who's done it will help you immensely doing that.
100%.
4-minute mile, you know, that 4-minute mile, nobody
Right.
did, and everybody did it, you know, so.
100%. So good stuff. Everybody who's here, can we show some love for everybody who's been on the panels? Really appreciate you guys being here. I'll see you guys in New Orleans next week. It's gonna be fun.
Yes, sir.
All right, appreciate you, Pat.
See you guys.
See you, Paul.
Thanks, Tim. Bye, everyone.
All right, good stuff. And I see DJ's got a question. Alex mentioned, hey, the problem with commercial real estate is it's hard to raise 25% down. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you think it is, then it's going to be. If you don't think it is, then it's not that hard, right? There's definitely mental barriers more so than there are actual barriers. You just heard from Ted Motherall saying there's more money on the sidelines than there's ever been in history looking for private equity, looking for deals, LP equity in deals right now. And that's true on the institutional side with these big real estate trusts and private equity firms and big lending institutions, and it's true on the personal side. People's 401ks and IRAs are the highest they've ever been worth, right? And if you are educated on how to extract that from the traditional realm and put it into a self-directed vehicle, like talking to Specialized Trust Services or any of these other self-directed custodians, and you can educate your folks on how to do that, then you're going to have access to private money to then go and deploy into real estate transactions. I can tell you that I've raised and purchased over $250 million of real estate without, and the most I've ever put in was $125,000 of my own money, 125 grand. And everything else was private money that I raised. Now, since I started making more money, I've started deploying more of my capital in LP positions in our different projects. But the reality of the situation is, if you know how to raise money, and that's a skill set, and if you don't have that skill set, you should definitely learn that skill set, because it doesn't matter what the market looks like. It doesn't matter what the economy looks like. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You will be hugely valuable to that industry, regardless of the market cycle that we're in, if you know how to go out and raise capital. You could raise capital for businesses. You could raise capital for real estate transactions, residential transactions, commercial transactions, any asset class, if you know how to go out and raise money. So if that's a bottleneck of yours, you got to go out and start building that muscle. And all it is just doing the reps. It's making people aware that you even raise money. That's usually the biggest bottleneck, is you're not talking to enough people and letting them know that you raise capital. You know, it's like, people don't just say, hey, they don't start tapping others on the shoulder and saying, hey, do you borrow money for real estate transactions? Because I'd love to invest with you. People don't even know that it's a thing that they can passively invest with you. That's why I'm so vocal about it, why I'm always talking about it on social media, to make sure that everybody knows that I raise money for real estate transactions. And so, and they can passively invest, and they can earn cash flow, and they can get depreciation, and they can earn equity appreciation and equity upside. And they can have the tax advantages and have something that they're invested in that's actually a tangible asset versus some business that you don't control, right? It's there's a lot of benefits. It's just people don't realize that it's even a capability. So be out there, be talking to people.
Hey, Tim, I had a question for you real quick.
Yeah,
Want to
who-
give a shout? It's DJ.
Okay, cool. For some reason, it's not popping up on my thing.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Justin Cook for inviting me, good buddy of mine. But I hadn't really thought about the idea of like the co-signer. I've syndicated, I've got about 60 units here in Louisville, and I syndicated that deal. I only put about 20 grand of my own money in, raised the rest of it. And so I'm definitely digging what you got. It literally just clicked somebody that they were talking about the networking event, and like you always see like networking for real estate. I've never thought about it. I'm curious on your thoughts if you think this would work. Host a networking event for the white collar type people like you guys are talking about to syndicate the deals with, and not necessarily typically when I go to real estate events, it's always guys that are putting together deals, not people that are looking to invest. Have you ever seen or seen anything like that work before, hosting like a localized event just to get like the limited partners versus like actually real estate people that are putting the deal together?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, even if it doesn't work and you don't have as many people that sign up as you would hope would sign up, that's okay. Just get the wheels, get the momentum going. The one thing that I would say is if you're trying to raise money specifically for real estate deals, right? Hit it in the face. Like people they try to host some sort of event that's like, we're going to learn about real estate and let's learn how a syndication works and and then they ask for money. And it's two different expectations that are set in the versus going in. And I've seen this over and over and over again with people who are real estate coaches and stuff. They try to host it as like a coaching event or something, and then they ask for money and nobody invests because that wasn't the expectation that was set. Versus, I'm like, dude, just tell them that this is an investment opportunity. If you're not an accredited investor, it's probably not a good fit for you to attend. Maybe you can come and just learn, but we are going to be talking about how they can actually invest in a real estate syndication that we are running and how they can earn X percentage of return, get some equity in the deal, get some depreciation to offset that income and blah, 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 blah. And dude, again, goes back to honesty is the best policy. Hit it in the face, man. Like people can smell the lack of authenticity and the lack of genuine promotion of an event or of a meetup or whatever. If they can sense it, and then they come in thinking that you're gonna, what's the angle here, dude? I just hit it in the face.
So so it's not seen as like a bait and switch, essentially. Like just be
exactly
with it, and then they know what's coming in. Cool, man.
Right.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I would put it together and I'd shoot out an email to all your clients. I'd shoot out an email to everybody in your industry, all the entrepreneurs that you know. Dude, I'd make a list, right? And who are the people that are the best people to invest? Typically, my A players of my investors fall into one of three categories. One, they're real estate professionals. So they might be a flipper, they might be a wholesaler, they might have something like I was talking to one of my investors who's got about $500,000 with me yesterday, and he owns 130 single family homes. He can go and buy more like this is what he does on a full-time basis, but he needs more depreciation. He's owned those long enough. He's depreciated them too much. He needs more depreciation. He came into one of my deals for several $100,000 that gave him heavy depreciation. And so a lot of the real estate professionals need that tax incentive. And so you need to be talking about that to attract those people. So real estate professionals is a great one. And they're already familiar with real estate and all those things. Number two is white collar professionals, accredited investors who have a full-time job, who have good income, but they're stuck on the long-term wealth side of things. So somebody who makes 200 grand a year or more in a traditional job or traditional W-2 or whatever their business looks like, they make 200 grand a year or more. First of all, they're accredited, so they can invest in a 506C syndication. And secondly, they have capital, whether that's cash or more likely it's money in a 401k or an IRA, and I can educate them on how to self-direct it, and then they can invest that into a deal. Here's where it gets really cool. Now they invest from their 401k or IRA into a real estate syndication. Well, guess what? A retirement account can't take depreciation. So then you can allocate that depreciation to the real estate full-time real estate professional who needs the extra depreciation and makes it more advantageous to them. So maybe you can offer a 10% or 12% return to the IRA with no depreciation because they can't use it anyways. And then you offer an 8% return to the real estate professional with accelerated and some additional depreciation, where now they're super pumped and they're willing to take a little bit lower of a return because of the tax advantages of it. So a couple of ideas there. And then the third group, which is hands down the biggest check writers of mine, are traditional entrepreneurs that are not real estate investors. Traditional entrepreneurs who are so busy building their e-commerce business, who are busy building their brick and mortar business. They own a bunch of whatever. They own a pharmaceutical company, not a pharmaceutical, but like what the hell is like one of my folks owns what the hell is it? Like a vitamin
Supplements.
yeah, supplements. I'm sorry, thank you. A supplements business, and they just print cash and they just funnel money to me. Another one of my big investors is a CPA, and he's got $4 or $5 million with me. And another so these are traditional business owners, own their own firm, and then they end up wanting to deploy capital. And I think that those are the three big categories. Those are my A players. And so I would host one event for each one of those potentially, or host one event for all those people. And you could bring in a self-directed IRA and trust custodian for all the white collar professionals and the people with W-2 jobs, and educate them on that. And then you educate on wealth building and how syndication works. And by the way, guys, this is how it works. And we have deals right now. So you can either invest with us as a short-term lender, and we can pay you maybe a little bit higher of a return, but there's no equity in a short-term loan, less than 12 months, but I could pay you 10-12% per year. And then the other one is maybe longer term, 36 up to 60 months, and you pay 8 to 10% return, plus there's some equity upside. So depending on what you're doing, you're more order taking now, as opposed to, you don't have to sell, dude. You just need to educate people on what this stuff is, and people are smart enough to make a decision on their own of, do I want short-term or long-term? Do I want this or that? What does that look like? So good questions though. Thanks guys, great stuff. I was not going to maybe tell me first part. Be emailing the recording. Yeah, I think we're sharing the recording. So Margie, you should be able to get that. And then also it's on my social media. So if we're not connected on Facebook already, please jump on to my Facebook, send me a friend request, and then you can watch all the recordings there as well. Oh yeah, there you go. Somebody responded. And then the other thing that I would say, and how I'll close this out, is that if anybody's interested in, you've heard it over and over and over again. Many of those people are actually, I think everybody is in Legacy Family, which is my mastermind. It's a group of about 200 rock star entrepreneurs. Some are full-time real estate professionals. Some have traditional businesses that passively invest. But what's really cool is, you saw how much value they bring. Everybody in the group has that level of value that they can bring to the table and have conversations with. So imagine being in a room of 200 millionaires who are all doing big things in business, who are even better human beings than they are entrepreneurs. And as good of entrepreneurs they are, they're even better humans, I guess is how I should say it. And so we don't typically offer it up for people who are not members. They're usually just fulfillment of our mastermind members. But we've had a lot of people who are like, hey, I don't want to make a 12-month commitment. Can I test out an event? And if you are interested, we are offering tickets to the event that's in New Orleans next year. We only host these masterminds 3 times per year. And you're welcome to check it out. I think there's a link. Oh, there it is right there. Annalise and Austin just posted it. So check out that link. You can come out next week. We'll be in New Orleans for 2 days. It's all about finance. It's all about money. It's all about being bankable. It's all about increasing your profitability in your business, increasing margin, trimming fat from your operations. Amanda Holbrook is going to be talking a lot about self-directed retirement accounts. A lot of really good stuff. A lot of speakers, panels, networking, social events. You just have to get there, get your hotel. We take care of everything else: food, drinks, networking, transportation to the evening activities, all these awesome social events. It's first class all the way. So we'd love to extend an invitation. You're welcome to come out, check it out. If it feels like a good fit, we'd invite you to join as a member. And worst case, you get to come out to a pretty awesome and amazing event, meet some incredible people. So check that out. And otherwise, I appreciate you guys being here. Give us some feedback. Let me know about some other topics that you'd be interested in learning about, and we'll put some master classes together for the next quarter, probably starting in April, doing some in April and May. I don't know if they're going to be every week or every other week, but we're going to try to organize that over the course of the next 30 days here, and we'll keep you guys posted. So keep an eye out for future master classes. Appreciate you guys being here. Alex, syndication structure is a great one. We'll do that. I like that. And yeah, if you're watching this on social media, just put it in the comment section, and anybody who's here, put it in the chat box, and we will work on putting some of those master classes together and make them available for you. And I like the open dialogue. I like the Q&A side of things, so that way you guys can really interact and engage and ask some of your individual questions as well. So that being said, appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend. Hopefully you see many of you in New Orleans next week, and go out there, be safe, be your best. Take care, y'all.